Rebuilding the Immortal Cultivation family. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 201 Rejection. Thank you for your kindness, fellow Taoist. I don't have this idea for the time being. Li Zhirui refused without hesitation. Zhang Fengwu was still unwilling to give up after hearing this, because when she was distributing the spiritual pills last night, she found that the spiritual pills he gave were of excellent quality. The poison in the pills was more than half that sold in the store, and the efficacy was much higher. It is conceivable how high Li Zhirui's alchemy level is. At that time, someone mentioned inviting him to join the team. In this way, they would spend much less on spiritual pills in the future and could accumulate more spiritual stones. You know, most of the cultivators in their team are from the casual cultivation background, including Zhang Fengwu. There is no family or sect support behind them, so naturally they can save as much as possible. Zhang Fengwu was very tempted by this, but she also had some concerns, worried that Li Zhirui would think that they were repaying a favor. But in the end, under the persuasion of everyone, she finally agreed to come and asked to see what Li Zhirui's reaction was. Are you asking for a favor? Li Zhirui frowned slightly. If that was the case, the cause and effect of saving his life would be difficult to resolve. Zhang Fengwu heard this and hurriedly shook his head and explained, "You misunderstood. We didn't have this idea. We just thought that the quality of the elixir you made was very good. We wanted to buy a good and cheap elixir, so we wanted to invite you to join the team." Li Zhirui's expression relaxed a lot. If that was the case, it was understandable. Because he knew how good the quality of the elixir he made was. After all, the elixir he gave out was for himself or his relatives and friends to take. Naturally, he had to use all his skills to pursue perfection. If he was selling it, Li Zhirui would not waste so much effort. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but secretly say that it was a mistake. This was the first time he took out such a good elixir. If the quality was poor later, what would those cultivators think? Would they think he was perfunctory? We will never exploit you. All matters related to alchemy are decided by you. We will never interfere, Zhang Fengwu emphasized many times. Sorry, thank you for your kindness, but Li Zhirui still refused. Zhang Fengwu asked unwillingly, "Can I ask why you don't want to? I have been away for a long time this time, and I will return to the family soon," Li Zhirui said. "Besides, I am injured now, and I can't make elixirs with high intensity." Zhang Fengwu heard the light in her eyes dimmed immediately. The other party's reason was reasonable. On the contrary, if she continued to pester him, it would be particularly ungrateful. "Okay then," Zhang Fengwu looked disappointed, "I am bothering you this time. Please don't blame me," Li Zhirui said politely. "It's okay. If you have any needs for elixirs, just come to me directly." Zhang Fengwu nodded and turned to leave. When she returned to the team's base, she looked at the disappointed team members and sighed, saying, "Li will leave the fairy city after you recover from your injuries. If you have any elixirs you want, you can count them and arrange someone to deliver them." This not only explained why Li Zhirui did not agree to join them, but also told everyone that he did not regret what he had promised before. Not long after, everyone registered the elixirs they needed, and finally handed the jade slip to Zhang Fengwu. "What is this, Captain? You haven't registered yet," the monk said. "Wait until you register, and give the jade slip to Li immediately." Zhang Fengwu didn't care, but she didn't go to find Li Zhirui the next day, but waited for several days before leaving. A few days later. Knock knock, the crisp knock on the door woke up Li Zhirui, who was healing. After slowly finishing his work, he got up and opened the door. "But have you registered the elixirs you need?" Li Zhirui knew what Zhang Fengwu was doing when he saw her coming, and immediately said with a smile. "Yes." Zhang Fengwu handed the jade slip and a storage bag filled with a large number of elixirs and spiritual stones to Li Zhirui, saying, "Thank you, fellow Taoist." Li Zhirui did not speak, but first checked the various elixirs in the jade slip. After a moment, he thought to himself, those cultivators have a conscience. They did not ask for too many elixirs because he only charged for the elixirs. Moreover, these elixirs are relatively common and not too difficult. Of course, the number of elixirs needed by more than a dozen foundation-building cultivators is not small, but it did not exceed Li Zhirui's psychological expectations. But what he didn't know was not that they still had a conscience, but that they only had so many spiritual stones in their hands and could only buy so many elixirs. Li Zhirui estimated in his mind and then said, "You need quite a lot of elixirs, which cannot be refined in a short time. It will take at least 2 or 3 months to complete them all." This was mainly because his meridians were fragile and he could not refine elixirs for a long time. If it was before, he could complete it in less than a month. "If you don't mind, you can send someone to take away a batch of elixirs every 10 days, Zhang Fengwu nodded and said, "Then do as you say." After that, he stood up and said goodbye. In the next 3 months, Li Zhirui stayed in the rented cave and never took a step out. And every 10 days, Zhang Fengwu would knock on the door and come to get the elixirs he had refined. This made Li Zhirui a little curious. As the most powerful captain of the team, she actually did such a small thing herself. But thanks to this, the relationship between the two became closer, and they could be said to be new friends. "This is the last batch of elixirs." Li Zhirui returned the storage bag where the elixirs and spirit stones were placed before. "Thanks to you, the strength of our team members has improved during this period." Li Zhirui said a few humble words, and then said, "Next, I will go into seclusion to heal my wounds. If you need any elixirs, please give me the list as soon as possible, so that I can refine them during my seclusion." "Refine elixirs during seclusion?" Zhang Fengwu said a little embarrassedly. "Will this disturb you?" Li Zhirui smiled and shook his head, explaining, "Refining elixirs is a way of cultivation for me, and it can also relax me." "It won't be a problem, then I'll trouble you." Fellow Taoist, Zhang Fengwu did not refuse this good thing. After all, elixirs of this quality, not to mention whether there are any on the market, even if there are, the high price is enough to make them retreat. He only said, "After this matter, the cause and effect between you and me should be written off, okay?" The smile on Li Zhirui's face became brighter and brighter. After all, this matter can not only help him settle the cause and effect, but also make a sum of spirit stones through the price difference. Why not? Thank you for your support. Chapter 202, Feelings. Zhang Fengwu looked at Li Zhirui's smiling face, and a warm current suddenly surged in her heart. She knew that she was moved. Because of her background, she rarely met outstanding cultivators of the same level like Li Zhirui, who was young, talented, and could refine elixirs, and was polite to others. So she couldn't help but feel a little affection, but Zhang Fengwu knew in her heart that their contact was just accidental. After this separation, it was probably almost impossible to meet again in the future. Although the background and other things that ordinary mortals value are not important in the eyes of cultivators. What cultivators value most is whether they can be together for a long time, and whether they can help each other's cultivation. This means that the two can go hand in hand, so that one person breaks through the Jinden or even higher realms, while the other stops at the foundation building. If this is true, then they cannot be called Taoist companions, but should be called lovers. After all, the difference in cultivation and lifespan between the two will make their status no longer equal. Therefore, cultivators have always attached great importance to the matter of Taoist companions and will never make a decision easily. Of course, those cultivators who seek the opposite sex to release their desires and those who have reached the end of their road are not included in this list. What's wrong? Are you okay? Li Zhirui asked when he saw Zhang Fengwu's strange expression. Zhang Fengwu saw that he was concerned, and her heart was beating uncontrollably. She was a decisive person who never dragged her feet, but in terms of feelings, she still had a bit of natural shyness of a woman. "I'm fine, thank you for your concern." Zhang Fengwu shook her head quickly and said, "I still have things to do, so I won't bother you anymore." After that, she turned around and left in a hurry. For some reason, Li Zhirui saw a trace of running away from her back. "How can I, Zhang Fengwu, become so shy?" On the way back, she was very dissatisfied with her performance just now. She should stay a little longer and have more contact with Li Zhirui. Maybe he would be as moved as she was? In terms of appearance, Zhang Fengwu was still very confident. She had never seen a female cultivator who was prettier than her since she started practicing. It's just that her outstanding appearance has brought her a lot of trouble. She has been in danger several times because of her appearance. So even though she is now in the late stage of foundation building and is the captain of a famous team in Black Mountain Immortal City, she dare not reveal her true appearance. But even so, Zhang Fengwu has no shortage of suitors, but she has very high standards and looks down on these people. Now that she has finally found one, she has to worry about whether the other party will look down on her. "Fengwu, Long time no see." An extremely magnetic voice suddenly sounded, and she instantly broke free from her annoyance. "Qin Haoming." Zhang Fengwu's eyes flashed with a trace of helplessness, and he asked indifferently, "What do you want to talk to me about?" Qin Haoming didn't care about it at all, and said enthusiastically and directly, "I just haven't seen you for a long time, and I miss you a little." To be honest, Zhang Fengwu didn't hate him. After all, Qin Haoming's background and qualifications are not bad, and his personality is very good. His appearance is far superior to others. In all aspects, he can be regarded as a good match. But unfortunately, in addition to this objective factor, emotional matters are more subjective. She has no feelings for him. Maybe they can become good friends, but that's all, and it's impossible to go further. When Qin Haoming confessed his feelings for the first time, Zhang Fengwu clearly rejected him, but he has been persevering and has no intention of giving up. Zhang Fengwu had no choice but to treat him with indifference, hoping that this would make him give up on his own initiative. "I said, I don't like you, and I don't have any feelings for you. Don't waste your time on me anymore, and don't come to me," Zhang Fengwu said coldly. After Qin Haoming was greatly encouraged by her soft-heartedness, Zhang Fengwu never said a nice word again. "I will definitely let you see my determination," Qin Haoming said firmly when he saw Zhang Fengwu was going to bypass him. "You have no chance, because I already have someone I like." Qin Haoming was struck by lightning. His face was dazed and he couldn't believe it. He muttered to himself, "Impossible. This is impossible. You must want me to give up," and deliberately made up a lie. Zhang Fengwu turned around and said word by word, "When have you seen me lie? Then can you tell me who he is? What do you like about him?" Zhang Fengwu didn't know how to answer this question, because she didn't know the answer herself. Emotions are something that can't be explained or understood. As she said this, she couldn't help but reveal a gentle smile, which was a side of her that Qin Haoming had never seen before. At this time, he finally believed Zhang Fengwu's words, and left with a look of deep shock and loss of soul. Zhang Fengwu didn't care about it at all. She had fought among countless casual cultivators, and the word soft-hearted never appeared on her. At this time, Li Zhirui didn't know that Zhang Fengwu had already fallen in love with her. He was only thinking about healing his wounds, returning to Banyan Island, and through this alchemy, completely repaying the debt of saving his life. Until Zhang Fengwu came again to take away the elixir he had refined during this period. Knock knock. The knock on the door was rarely heard, but it sounded twice today. "Dao, do you have any other guests?" Li Zhirui shook his head. He was also very confused about this. As he walked towards the door, he explained, "I don't know many people in the Immortal City." When he opened the door and saw a cultivator who was disheveled and looked very down and out, he was even more confused, because he didn't know him at all, so he had to ask, "Are you looking for me?" On the contrary, Zhang Fengwu, who followed behind, recognized who the person was at a glance and said in a cold voice, "Qin Haoming. You actually followed me secretly, Dao Zhang. Do you know him?" Qin Haoming stared at Li Zhirui and said, "Is he the person you like?" These days, Qin Haoming has been secretly observing Zhang Fengwu, trying to find out who she likes, but she hasn't seen outsiders for several days. Only today, she not only dressed up, but also seemed to be in a good mood, and she entered the cave of a strange male cultivator, so she said that. "Shut up," Zhang Fengwu shouted a little out of control. The faint light in Qin Haoming's eyes was extinguished in an instant, and he muttered to himself, "It seems that it is really him. But it seems that he doesn't like you." He didn't do anything extreme, but after calming down, he looked at Zhang Fengwu and Li Zhirui with a sharp gaze and said, "If one day, you hurt her, I will definitely do everything I can to repay you tenfold. Sorry, I forgot to post it last night." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 203 Homeward Journey. Li Zhirui looked at Qin Haoming leaving with full of doubts, and felt that he was the one who was caught in the crossfire. Zhang Fengwu was obviously using him as a shield, and couldn't help but smile and said, "It seems that Zhang Dao is very popular." Zhang Fengwu saw that Li Zhirui didn't take it to heart, and felt relieved, but also sad, because this showed that the other party had no idea about her. This made her doubt her charm for the first time, and even had the urge to reveal her true face. What if I say this is true? But thinking about it, Jiang Fengwu felt unwilling, and a courage that came from nowhere made her say this. Li Zhirui looked at her in shock, because this seemed incredible to him. You know, the two have only known each other for a few months, and they haven't had much contact. Although they can still chat and barely count as friends, they don't actually know each other too much. As for love at first sight, it's not that Li Zhirui is self-deprecating, but that although his appearance is good, he is not too outstanding among the cultivators, and he is not enough to make the female cultivator fall for him. Dao Jiang, are you kidding? Li Zhirui couldn't help asking again. Perhaps he felt that this was not appropriate, so he quickly added, I just think it's a little unbelievable. I don't mean anything else, Dao Li. I never joke about feelings, Jiang Fengwu said seriously. What King Haoming said just now is true. I really like you. Li Zhirui frowned slightly. Although he had space, a secret that must not be known to another person, he still wanted to find a Taoist partner who could walk with him on the road. Jiang Fengwu's qualifications and character were all good, but combined with her being a casual cultivator, she could only be said to be of medium to upper qualifications. Because casual cultivators are often limited by their vision and environment, they pursue the height of their realm and the strength of their strength. As for accumulation and foundation, these words have nothing to do with casual cultivators. So although Jiang Fengwu has the cultivation of the late stage of foundation building and looks very young and strong, he does not necessarily have the opportunity to break through the golden elixir. Li Zhirui has broken through the bottleneck. As long as his injuries are healed, he can start to retreat and break through. I don't know what Dao Jiang likes about me, Li Zhirui said in a deep voice, but I want to say that we are not familiar with each other, and we don't know each other in terms of worldviews and other aspects. Moreover, I will return to the family soon and prepare to retreat to break through the Jiangdan. Some things don't need to be said, and both sides can understand each other. So I'm sorry, I can't respond to Dao's feelings. Perhaps this statement is a bit cruel to Jiang Fengwu, but Li Zhirui had to say it, so as to cut off her feelings. In fact, Li Zhirui had made up his mind a long time ago that if he wanted to find a Taoist partner, at least after breaking through the Jiangdan, he would find a female cultivator of the same realm and not much different in age. This requirement may not seem to be much, but it is actually very strict, because there are not many Jiangdan cultivators, and even fewer female cultivators. As for the condition of not much difference in age, there are almost no such female cultivators in the several cultivation realms near the Big Banyan Island, and it is impossible for such an excellent female cultivator to be married to the Li family. As for why he didn't find a Taoist partner in the Yuanying realm, it was because there were no Yuanying female cultivators in the 10,000 miles of the Big Banyan Island. And even if Li Zhirui is very confident in himself and thinks he can break through the nascent soul, it will take a very long time. Is it because you think I can't break through the golden core? Jiang Fengwu said somewhat unconvinced. Li Zhirui didn't speak, but the expression on his face had told her his thoughts. I will definitely break through the golden core. It's not that Jiang Fengwu is deeply in love with Li Zhirui and loves him to death, but breaking through the golden core is the wish of all cultivators. In addition, Li Zhirui's judgment made her, who has always been arrogant, very dissatisfied, so she made this promise so that she could slap him in the face. Li Zhirui didn't answer, but just smiled slightly. After all, at this time, it would be bad for him to say anything. Humph, Jiang Fengwu was very dissatisfied with this attitude, snorted lightly, and didn't want to communicate with Li Zhirui anymore, and immediately got up and left. Li Zhirui shook his head slightly, closed the door immediately, and returned to the quiet room. But what he didn't know was that Jiang Fengwu didn't leave directly. After walking a few steps, he turned around and looked back. But what he saw was a closed door. This made her feel angry and wronged for no reason. In the days that followed, Jiang Fengwu never came to take the elixir away again, but arranged for another monk. What was his reaction? After the monk went back, he was greeted by Jiang Fengwu's anxious questioning. Very calm, just asked me to show my identity and then handed the elixir to me. Jiang Fengwu was very disappointed and cursed in a low voice. Cold-blooded guy, Captain, since you like him so much, why don't you go there in person? The monk asked with a curious look on his face. Jiang Fengwu pursed her lips and didn't explain. She just asked him to leave. She wanted to be alone. She looked at the front with her eyes blankly, and sadness filled her body. Fortunately, she was not the kind of person who complained about herself. She quickly got rid of this negative emotion, and a trace of determination appeared on her face. She said, I will definitely break through the golden elixir. It's not that Zhang Fengwu has a deep affection for Li Zhirui, but her pride makes her unwilling to give in easily. Time passed quickly, and several months passed in a blink of an eye. After this period of recuperation and healing, Li Zhirui's injuries were completely healed, and the karma he owed had long been repaid, so he was ready to leave and return to his family tomorrow. The next morning, he walked out of the gate of the fairy city, but he didn't expect to run into Zhang Fengwu's team returning from the battlefield. Captain, they are all leaving, why don't you go quickly? It will be too late if you are late, the cultivator who went to get the elixir before whispered. Zhang Fengwu made up his mind and immediately walked to Li Zhirui. Are you going home? Li Zhirui nodded and said with a smile, it seems that all Taoist friends have gained a lot this time. Everyone was in high spirits, and anyone could see it. Can you tell me which family you come from? I'll come to find you after I break through the giant stage. A trace of surprise flashed in Li Zhirui's eyes. He originally thought that the other party would give up because of his rejection, but now it seems that he didn't. However, he also saw that Zhang Fengwu was not deeply in love with him, but wanted to prove herself. This made Li Zhirui frown. He didn't expect Zhang Fengwu to be so proud, just like her name, like a proud phoenix. You don't want to tell me this. Seeing that he didn't respond for a long time, Zhang Fengwu became more and more disappointed. My family is located on an island east of Yunping's Hao. You can find out if you ask a little. Li Zhirui said this in voice transmission. Chapter 204 Calculation. I will definitely go find you, Zhang Fengwu said seriously, and then he led the team members into the fairy city, leaving only a wisp of fragrance. Perhaps, it is a good choice to become a Taoist partner with her. After all, Zhang Fengwu has a very good appearance, and she can practice to the late stage of foundation building as a casual cultivator, which is enough to prove her qualifications and talent. If she still has feelings for him after breaking through the golden elixir, she can get to know him in depth and try to get along with him for a while. Thinking of this, Li Zhirui couldn't help laughing, shook his head and put the matter behind him, called Zhao King out, and said excitedly, go home. After several years, after experiencing life and death, he finally fulfilled his expectations before going out, and naturally he would not stay in the outside world. You know, retreating to form a pill is not a trivial matter. If there is no one to protect the law, it is very likely to be destroyed by someone with ulterior motives. There was once a casual cultivator who broke through the shackles with great difficulty, and was looking forward to the scenery after the breakthrough, but was destroyed by an enemy. Not only did he fail to break through, he also perished on the spot, dying under the angry thunder. Li Zhirui didn't want to be the topic of conversation, so he would never break through in seclusion in the outside world. Cry! Zhao King screamed, spread his huge wings, and waved them violently. He flew several miles away. In the eyes of other cultivators, he was just a ray of green light rising into the sky, and disappeared from their side in the blink of an eye. Why don't you chase him and kill him? As long as he dies, no one will compete with you for Zhang Fengwu, a white-robed cultivator said to Qin Haoming next to him. Even if he dies, Zhang Fengwu will not be tempted by me. Qin Haoming smiled coldly, I have let her go, and I will return to the family and start retreat. The white-robed monk was moved, and he suppressed his excitement and asked, are you going to form a pill? Once the obsession in your heart is gone, the bottleneck will break by itself. Qin Haoming turned and looked at him, with a trace of deep resentment in his eyes, and said lightly, isn't this what you want to see? After cutting off his feelings for Zhang Fengwu, the first thing he did was to look through his previous memories, carefully checking all kinds of experiences, and finally came to a result he couldn't believe. He fell in love with Zhang Fengwu. Of course, there were reasons for it, but more because of the work of some people in the family. They used a kind of spiritual fragrance that could evoke emotions on him, which made him fall in love with Zhang Fengwu, and then used various means to deepen his feelings for her. Because he couldn't get what he wanted, he finally formed an obsession in his heart. If Li Zhirui hadn't appeared, Zhang Fengwu would have only died suddenly, using such extreme means to shatter his obsession and let him take the last step. Of course, this method is not safe, because it is very likely that the impact is too great and completely shattered Qin Haoming's heart of Taoism. But for the Qin family, it is nothing at all. After all, he is a waste who can't even get through the love tribulation and is not worth cultivating. Regarding the fact that Qin Haoming saw the family's calculations and was so calm. The white-robed monk was not only not worried, but became more excited, because such a person is the talent the family wants. I will report your performance to the family, and you will definitely get the family's key training, the white-robed monk said confidently. Qin Haoming was very calm, or in other words, he no longer had any feelings for this family, but he couldn't leave. Because his parents and relatives are still in the family, and no matter what, he can have his current achievements, which is inseparable from the family's training. This cause and effect alone makes him unable to withdraw, unless he gives up his own path. You have been following me for so long, and you are still unwilling to show up. Li Zhirui asked Zhao King to stop in a wilderness and said in a cold voice. He had left the immortal city for half an hour. At first, he did not notice the group of cultivators behind him, but when Zhao King's speed became faster and faster, they had to speed up in order not to be left behind, which exposed them. Originally, Li Zhirui did not want to make a big move, and wanted Zhao King to leave them behind, but he did not expect that they would not give up and followed him. 6 cultivators suddenly appeared behind him, 4 men and 2 women, 3 of whom were in the late stage of foundation building and 3 in the middle stage of foundation building. Facing such a powerful lineup, Li Zhirui did not feel panic at all. Although he might not be able to defeat them, there was no problem in leaving safely. I heard that you are an alchemist? You must have a lot of spiritual stones and spiritual objects in your hands, right? The leading cultivator, with greed in his eyes, said. Hand over the storage bag, and we will let you go. Li Zhirui's eyes darkened. The news that he was an alchemist, in addition to the cultivators of Zhang Fengwu's team, actually knew about it? What he didn't know was that because the elixir he refined was of excellent quality, the price was much higher than the elixir on the market. As a result, some cultivators sold the elixirs in their hands to earn spiritual stones, and then used them to buy elixirs in the market and make a part of the difference. So even though Li Zhirui had not been out for a few months, he was still noticed by many people. As soon as he went out today, he was targeted by several waves of cultivators. It was just that Zhao King was too fast, and in the end only the 6 of them caught up. Otherwise, Li Zhirui would have to face more than just these few people. Want a storage bag? Then it depends on whether you have the ability. As soon as the voice fell, Li Zhirui's spell was cast. A nearly 100-foot-long green dragon soared into the sky, and the vine dragon exhaled, and one explosive fruit after another flew towards them. These fruits seemed to have no lethality, but they did not dare to be careless. After all, they were from casual cultivators, and if they were not careful enough, they would not be alive until now. One by one, they cast defensive spells at the fastest speed and retreated to the back at the same time. Boom boom, the endless explosions caused the surrounding space to tremble. If it fell on them, the consequences would be disastrous. Even though they were far enough away, the terrifying power still frightened them. But before they could catch their breath, they saw the huge dragon's tail swinging and smashing towards them with a huge force. The heavy dragon's tail fell on them at an unexpected speed, directly shattering the outermost layer of their defensive aura. The terrifying impact force knocked them hundreds of feet away. In fact, their strength was not that weak, but because Li Zhirui attacked one after another, they were unable to respond in time, which gave him the upper hand. However, when they came to their senses and joined forces to deal with him, the offense and defense would be reversed, and Li Zhirui would end up like them now. So Li Zhirui did not continue to entangle with them, and controlled the vine dragon to launch a final attack. After a huge self-explosion, he took the opportunity to get rid of them. Thank you for your support. Chapter 205 Beast Tide. Damn it. He actually escaped. When they safely survived the explosion and wanted to deal with Li Zhirui, he had already disappeared without a trace. After this fight, the return journey was uneventful. After a few days of running around, Li Zhirui returned to Yunping's house safely. Why has Yunping Market become so lonely and deserted? Looking at the empty street in front of him with few pedestrians, Li Zhirui said to himself in surprise. You know, this was the busiest street in the past, and most of the time it was crowded and overcrowded. Senior, you don't know that the beast tide broke out a few days ago, and the casual cultivators in the market went to the infinite sea to kill monsters and earn spirit stones. A cultivator who wanted to take the opportunity to please him immediately answered. Beast tide. Li Zhirui was slightly stunned. He didn't expect that the beast tide would break out again. The last time the beast tide broke out, the family suffered serious damage, but this time, it seemed much easier. After all, the current Li family is powerful, and there are 2 giant cultivators sitting in charge. Ordinary beast tides are not to be feared at all. This is also the reason why all the independent cultivators in the market came out in droves. With the two giant cultivators of the Li family, they would never let the water monsters go ashore in order to protect the spiritual islands. Therefore, the independent cultivators can hide on the shore with peace of mind, killing the seemingly endless water monsters and harvesting various spiritual objects from their corpses. The long and boring killing did not disgust the independent cultivators. Instead, they kept an excited state. After all, the more water monsters they killed, the more spiritual materials they harvested. Moreover, every beast tide is the best time for independent cultivators to accumulate spiritual stones. Maybe if they work hard for a few more years, they can buy a foundation building pill to help themselves break through the foundation building stage. Speaking of which, Li Zhirui gave the cultivator dozens of spiritual stones and turned to leave the market. He was originally going to inquire about the situation in Yunping's Hao in recent years, but now the family is encountering a beast tide. Although he is very confident in the strength of the family, it is impossible for him to know about this and stand idly by. Right, however, there were a large number of independent cultivators standing on the island chain east of Redwood Island, and in front of them were even more numerous water monsters, so dense that they dyed a large area of seawater black. Second grandfather, the number of beasts this year seems to be much larger, Li Zhirui said with some worry. Li Shiking led most of the tribesmen to sit here to resist the beast tide and protect Redwood Island, while Li Shilian led another part to guard the Banyan Island to prevent the tribe from being attacked. At this time, Li Shiking had a solemn look on his face, because this beast tide seemed a little unusual. After thinking about it, he opened his mouth and ordered, "Tell the tribesmen to be careful and it is best to withdraw from the front line. Remember to keep it secret from those independent cultivators. After all, if the independent cultivators found that the Li family was retreating, how could they stay? In this case, it would not take long for this line of defense to be captured by the water monsters. At that time, it would be the several spiritual islands of Redwood Island that would face this huge beast tide. If it really comes to this, even if the Li family wins in the end, the spiritual creatures on the island will suffer heavy losses. After all, the water monsters' overwhelming spells are simply impossible for these spiritual islands to resist. Perhaps these spells are not enough to kill a cultivator, but they are fatal blows to those fragile spiritual creatures. And if they lose, the consequences are even more needless to say. The water monsters will definitely devour all the spiritual creatures. Redwood Island and the three spiritual islands will become a white land, and the Li family's years of hard work will be destroyed. However, to the surprise of the two, the time after that was calm and there was no accident. This made the two doubt their judgment. When something went wrong, the casual cultivators not far away suddenly heard a panic-stricken identity. Third-level water monster. Li Shiking flew forward and saw a huge third-level octopus monster making trouble. His expression became very solemn step by step. "I don't know why you suddenly appeared," Li Shiking asked loudly. The third-level monster can communicate normally. Except for a very small number of demon beasts, after breaking through the third level, their intelligence is like that of an adult mortal, no longer as ignorant as before, and they have also refined the horizontal bones and can communicate on their own. And when this third-level octopus monster appeared, Li Shiking and others figured out the reason for the abnormal beast tide. After all, it was the second-level water monsters who drove the water monsters before, and it was inevitable that there would be omissions. But this time, it was the third-level water monster who personally took action, and the number of low-level water monsters driven away naturally increased. "I just broke through not long ago, I want to borrow your lives." After saying that, huge tentacles burst out from the bottom of the sea, and some unlucky monks who did not dodge in time had already entered the mouth of the octopus monster. "How dare you!" Li Shiking saw this scene and was immediately furious. The sword in his hand flashed with spiritual light, and he shouted loudly, "Kill him together. When the time comes, you will deal with the flesh and blood on his body, with rich prizes in front. It will definitely attract a group of monks to join. Even a large number of ants can kill an elephant, not to mention that Li Shiking has joined in." Soon, the octopus demon had his first order tentacles cut off by him. However, the angry octopus demon did not choose to retreat, but continued to fight with Li Shiking. "Humph! You don't know whether to live or die?" With the help of the monks and the other party being injured, how could Li Shiking miss such a good opportunity? Various spells poured out, and such an intensive offensive made the octopus demon feel painful and calm down from his anger. "I remember this time, and I will definitely pay you back in the future." The octopus demon threw a cruel word, sank into the sea, and soon disappeared. This is the advantage of the water monsters. Once they see that the situation is not good, they can directly escape into the boundless sea. As a cultivator from the human race, they have no advantage in this regard. Even if a cultivator feels that he is sure to kill it in the sea, so he follows it into the sea, then in the end, it is probably not the water monster that will be beheaded, but the monk. Damn it, Li Zhirui gritted his teeth, but he could only watch the octopus monster leave, which laid a hidden danger for the family. However, without the expulsion of this third-level octopus monster, the water monsters in the beast tide began to calm down. After a large number of casualties, they turned around and fled, and did not choose to entangle and fight with the monks. When Li Zhirui came to the island chain, he happened to see the scene of the water monsters retreating, and said with a smile, "It seems that I was worrying too much." "Zhirui, when did you come back?" Li Zhirui said with surprise. "I just arrived in Yunpingfang City today, but I heard that a beast tide broke out, and I flew here non-stop," but he didn't expect it to be such a coincidence. Okay, let's talk about the old times after returning to the family. Chapter 206 Misleading. The first thing Li Zhirui did when he returned to the family was to clean up the battlefield with the clan members, and at the same time, he had to buy the spiritual materials from the scattered cultivators. Although the number of spiritual materials was extremely large, the Li family did not deliberately lower the purchase price, only about 10% lower than usual. This has made many scattered cultivators very excited, and they all praised the Li family. You know, the price that Yuan Mingzong bought spiritual objects at was at least 20% lower. Of course, the Li family did not have the ability to eat all the spiritual objects, so they collected about 40% from the scattered cultivators and had to give up. After being busy for several hours, when Li Zhirui and others returned to the Banyan Island, the sky had become gloomy. "Second brother, you are finally back. How is the situation of the beast tide?" Li Zhirui asked repeatedly. It was a close call, and the clan members did not suffer too many casualties, but even with him in charge, there were still a few unlucky clan members who died in the hands of the water monster. "Zhirui, you?" Li Zhirui then turned his attention away, and at first glance he saw Li Zhirui standing on the left-hand side of Li Zhirui. "Everyone has been busy all day and is tired. Let's talk about it tomorrow." Li Zhirui interrupted Li Zhirui, glanced at Li Zhirui, and said, "The clan meeting will be held tomorrow, and you can't be absent." He knew that Li Zhirui had many questions to ask, so he nodded in agreement, and then dispersed with the clan members. Li Zhirui walked to the gate of the small courtyard, looking at the courtyard that had not been returned for several years but was still as clean as new, and a sense of steadiness instantly surged in his heart. "We're home." He let Deking and Zhaoqing out and let them move freely, while he himself entered the room and began his daily practice. The next morning, Li Zhirui went out to the main hall to attend this family meeting. When he arrived, there were already many elders inside, but Li Zhirui was not familiar with them, because since Li stepped down as the acting clan leader, he almost never attended the family meeting. Moreover, he was either in seclusion or training outside in recent years, and the time he spent in the family was very little. Naturally, he was not familiar with these elders, and they just greeted each other politely. Soon, all the tribesmen who were supposed to come arrived. Li Zhirui, the tribe leader, was the first to speak. According to preliminary statistics, this beast tide caused the death of 5 tribesmen and injured dozens of tribesmen, but the injuries were not serious, and the beast tide was also blocked outside the island chain, and did not cause much damage to the 3 Redwood Islands. As for the Banyan Island, only a few water monsters attacked, because usually the tribesmen would train nearby. There are 2 benefits to doing this. One is to improve strength through fighting, and the other is to reduce the number of water monsters. As a result, all the water monsters within 100 miles were eliminated by the tribesmen. The reason why the dozens of water monsters that attacked the Banyan Island were able to escape was probably that they had only recently turned into monsters. In short, although there were some losses in this beast tide, for the current Li family, it can only be regarded as a small setback, without much impact. The harvest is the various spiritual objects bought from the hands of the casual cultivators. After processing, the family should be able to earn a lot of spiritual stones from them. After Li Zhirui finished speaking, Li Zhirui spoke up. Through this beast tide, it can be seen that although the family has developed rapidly, it is still lacking in many aspects. For example, the spiritual objects are not fully prepared, the reaction is not fast enough, and the preparation ability is weak, so that for a period of time, various spiritual pills and talismans cannot be purchased. During that time, many casual cultivators left the battlefield for safety reasons. After all, no one had spiritual pills to restore mana, and there was no way to replace them in time. If it weren't for Li Zhirui, a giant and cultivator, who was there and helped several times, the island chain would not be able to stop the water monsters. And most of the fallen and injured clansmen encountered accidents at this time. The beast tide is over, but it doesn't mean that there will be no more in the future. We must learn from the experience and lessons of this time to ensure that similar situations will not happen again next time. Everyone lowered their heads after hearing these words, because most of the elders stayed in the family to organize and prepare logistics. After today, I will not mention these things again. You all remember them well, Li Zhirui said in a deep voice. Zizan, prepare for the funeral of the 5 clansmen. Every clansman must attend. Yes, if you have nothing to do, go and get busy. Li Zhirui waved his hand and looked at Li Zhirui, who was sitting in the corner without saying a word, and said, Zhirui, come with me. I have something to ask you. Li Zhirui stood up and followed him out of the main hall. Li Zhirui thought about it and followed him. Tell me, are you going to retreat and break through the golden elixir this time you go home? Li Zhirui asked impatiently as soon as he entered the back hall. Li Zhirui nodded and smiled. You didn't disappoint second grandpa, did you? Good, good, good. This way, our Li family will have a successor. Li Zhirui, who was standing by, was also excited and happy, but after he calmed down, he frowned and said, it is indeed a good thing that Zhirui has broken through, but if the news leaks, Yuan Mingzong may be unfavorable to Zhirui. It's not that there are spies in the family, but when Li Zhirui breaks through and crosses the tribulation, Yuan Mingzong will definitely know about it at the first time, and it is very likely that he will interfere. After these words came out, Li Zhirui and Li Zhirui were stunned. They really didn't expect this to happen. Do you want Zhirui to not retreat on the Banyan Island to overcome the tribulation? Li Zhirui nodded. That was what he thought. He even made some inquiries and said, there are caves in Qingshan province that are specially provided for cultivators to retreat and overcome the tribulation. As long as you pay enough spirit stones, they will specially arrange for cultivators to help protect the law, and will never let anyone disturb the tribulation. After that, Zhirui will quietly go to Qingshan province, and the family will pretend that you are retreating on the island, so there is no need to worry that Yuan Mingzong will do anything. In fact, these tribulation caves are mainly provided for those casual cultivators to use, and the price is indeed not cheap. The minimum rent is 1 year, and the rent is 50,000 spirit stones. If it exceeds 1 day, it will also be counted as 1 year's price. And many casual cultivators can't actually afford so many spirit stones. After all, in order to improve their cultivation as soon as possible, they can't keep spirit stones in their hands. At this time, the store will intimately give a second set of plans, which is to join the power behind them, become a guest elder, and work for that power. And this is the real purpose of the tribulation cave. But Li Zhirui doesn't have to worry about the spiritual stones, because even if he can't take them out, the family will help pay for them. Okay, Li Zhirui said without hesitation, in a few days, Zhirui, you will secretly leave the family and go to King Shan's house to retreat and overcome the calamity, and we will arrange for the clan members to spread this news and mislead Yuan Mingzong. Happy little New Year. Chapter 207 Retreat. Li Zhirui naturally agreed to Li Zhirui's arrangement, but he was not in a hurry to leave the family, but stayed on the Banyan Island for several days. During this period, in addition to refining elixirs, he either went to Linghuan to teach the young clansmen, or went to the alchemy peak to instruct the clansmen in refining elixirs. It is worth mentioning that among the new generation of clansmen, there is a person with a very good talent for alchemy, named Li Zhirui, so he was trained by the family, and he himself was also very competitive and successfully broke through the foundation. Among the many clansmen of the Cheng generation, in addition to him, there are many who are worthy of the family's key training. For example, Li Zhirui, who has the dual spiritual roots of gold and fire, is not only well qualified, but also quite talented in refining tools. With the help of the earth fire, he can actually practice key and refine a second-level magic tool. When this happened, the family's top leaders were ecstatic. After all, among the 6 arts of cultivation, there is Li Zhirui for talismans, Li Zhirui and Li Zhirui for alchemy, and there is also a latecomer Li Zhirui. Li Zhirui's attainments and formations are not low. not to mention spiritual plants and beast control. The former is a skill that all forces must know, and the latter is the foundation of the Li family. Only refining has always been a drag, and the Li family has not yet produced a second-level alchemist. The appearance of Li Chang'er just filled this gap. It is not that every force must be proficient in the 6 arts, but the stronger the strength and the deeper the foundation of the force, the higher the shortcomings in the 6 arts. In addition to these 2 people, there are several good juniors in the Cheng generation, but Li Zhirui did not find a clan member like Li Zhixun among them. Come to think of it, Li Zhixun was so calm and indifferent at a young age. How can this be possessed by ordinary people? In this way, Li Zhirui stayed on the Banyan Island for more than half a month without any special events. Then he returned to the small courtyard, hung a sign of retreat at the door, activated the formation of the courtyard, and pretended to be in retreat. But in fact, that night, Li Zhirui quietly left a Banyan Island and flew to King Shan's Hao on Zhaoking. The news that he had broken through the Jinden in retreat spread like wildfire, and reached the ears of countless cultivators at a very fast speed. Oh my god! How old is Li Zhirui? He is only about 50 or 60 years old at most, and now he is preparing to break through the Jinden in retreat, a certain Kigan cultivator said with an exaggerated expression. I am not a few years younger than him, but one is still lingering in the Kigan stage, and the other is about to break through the Jinden and become an existence admired by everyone. What? Is he so young? He's going to break through the Jinden at such a young age? So wouldn't it be possible to break through the Yuanying in the future? The rest became more and more exaggerated, but the purpose of the Li family was also achieved in this process. After all, the purpose of doing so was mainly to mislead Yuan Mingzhuang. Do you think the news from the Li family is reliable? Upon hearing the news, the head of Yuanming sect immediately summoned the foundation-building cultivators in the mountain gate and asked seriously. An elder said, I think it should be true. After all, Li Zhirui was in the late stage of foundation building a few years ago. He has not shown up in these years. I think he went out to gain experience and took the last step. I think they did it on purpose. This is very likely a fake news. There are those who agree and those who disagree. An elder said in a deep voice. If it is a trap as you said, then what is the purpose of the Li family doing this? Even if they want to disrupt Li Zhirui's tribulation, they have to wait until he crosses the tribulation. Now he has just started his retreat, and it is still a rumor. I don't know how long it will take. For a moment, the elders who opposed were speechless. Yes, if it is a trap, who is it for? Well, since everyone thinks it is true, then the question is, the Li family is about to have the 3rd Jinden cultivator. How should the sect deal with this? The head of the sect looked more and more solemn. Yuanming sect has only 2 Jinden so far. Although it has never given up on training new Jinden monks, it has not succeeded so far. Although Jiang Xianming is in the middle stage of Jinden, it will undoubtedly be a fierce battle if he faces the joint efforts of 2 Jinden. After all, the rise of the Li family devours the interests of Yuanming sect. If it were not for the destruction of King Jian sect, there would probably be a lot of conflicts between Yuanming sect and Li family. They are all foundation-building monks. How can they deal with Jinden? The only way is to stop Li Zhirui and prevent him from breaking through, an elder said coldly. What we have to do next is to wait until the calamity cloud appears over the big Banyan Island. Everyone can't think of a better way, so they can only follow this method. At this time, Li Zhirui has come to King Shenfang Market and is negotiating the rental matters with a boss of a shop that rents out a cave for crossing the calamity. Do you have some enlightenment and want to retreat? The caves in our shop are very rich in spiritual energy. Every year, we need, he said a lot of useless words, and finally said the price. The rental for 1 year is 60,000 spiritual stones. This price is not too exaggerated, but Li Zhirui certainly cannot show such a reaction. Instead, his face became a little bitter and said, this price is too high. Can it be cheaper? No. A gleam of light flashed in the shopkeeper's eyes, and he immediately said, if you don't have enough spiritual stones, we can help you pay for it. At that time, you just need to help you deal with some small things. Li Zhirui seemed to think deeply about it, and finally shook his head and refused, showing a helpless expression, saying, I am used to being casual. I am afraid I can't stand this kind of restraint. Thank you for your kindness. After saying that, he left the shop without waiting for the shopkeeper to react. The purpose of doing this was to understand the rental of this kind of cave, so as not to be cheated. In the end, Li Zhirui rented a cave that he liked for a year with a rent of 58,000 spiritual stones, for a total of 2 years. Finally, all the trivial matters have been dealt with. I can start my retreat. With a long sigh, Li Zhirui released Deking and Zhaoking. They can help protect the law. After all, when you are out, no matter how others guarantee you, accidents may happen. It is better for us to take more measures. Next, I will trouble you to protect the law for me. Li Zhirui said softly. Gee. Li. The two pets nodded repeatedly and agreed without hesitation. At this time, Deking is still in the middle stage of foundation building, but he is only one step away from the late stage. It won't take long for him to break through. Zhaoking is also in the middle stage of foundation building, but because of insufficient accumulation, there is still a big gap between him and Deking. This time, I will definitely break through successfully. After saying that, Li Zhirui turned and walked into the quiet room, and began his last retreat in the foundation building realm. Chapter 208, Overcoming the Tribulation. In the first month of seclusion, Li Zhirui adjusted his state before he began to breathe in and out spiritual energy. As the exercises were running, the surrounding spiritual energy rolled in, entering the body from the mouth and nose, and turned into drops of mana during the tempering of the meridians, merging into the Danshan Fa He. The Fa He, which had not expanded for a long time, finally moved this time. Although it was very slow, it meant that Li Zhirui's path to the golden elixir was unobstructed. The mana increased little by little, and after he polished it many times, it began to become thick. This process was very boring and uninteresting, because it could only be repeated continuously. If a cultivator with a weak heart of Taoism could not hold on for long. Time passed quickly, and more than half a year had passed in a trance. After this period of practice and polishing, Li Zhirui's Danshan Fa He is now filled with extremely thick mana, and the area has reached the limit of the foundation building realm. The most worth mentioning is that the yellow bud in the center of the Fa He has become radiant and dazzling because it has absorbed a lot of mana. And this also gave Li Zhirui an illusion, as if he could condense the golden elixir at any time as long as he wanted. But he stopped in time, because after half a year of practice, his meridians and soul needed to rest well and adjust to the most perfect state, so that he could better cope with the next real test. And when forming the elixir, a lot of spiritual energy is needed. Although the other party repeatedly guaranteed that there would be no shortage of spiritual energy when renting the cave, Li Zhirui still prepared to make some arrangements for the sake of safety. After all, if something went wrong, he still had another choice to ensure that there would be no problems when breaking through. In order to maintain his current state of mind, Li Zhirui did not leave the quiet room. About half a month later, he adjusted his state. Then he got up and escaped into the space, took off the golden Ganoderma that had been prepared long ago, and immediately flashed out. He actually had several mature golden Ganoderma in his hand, but it could only increase the probability of forming the elixir once, so he only picked one. Huh? Li Zhirui exhaled a long breath of turbid air, turned his hand and took out an exquisite jade box and a small jade bottle. The jade box is used to place the golden mushroom, and the small jade bottle contains several top-grade elixirs. These are the only top-grade elixirs with elixir patterns that he has made in all these years of refining elixirs, including 2 Baikao pills and 3 Ningguan pills. These 5 elixirs were specially reserved by Li Zhirui, ready to be swallowed and refined when he attacks the golden elixir. Whether it is the golden mushroom or the top-grade elixir, they are treasures that many cultivators cannot get. He poured out 2 Baikao pills and swallowed them in one gulp. With a bang, it was like a volcanic eruption. A huge spiritual energy rose in his abdomen and traveled along the meridians in his body. But when it finally fell into the Danshan, it did not stir up any waves. He was still building a perfect foundation. But at this time, Li Zhirui picked up the golden mushroom and swallowed it into his stomach in 2 or 3 mouthfuls, followed by the remaining 3 top-grade Ningguan pills. A more powerful spiritual energy rushed into his body after a while, causing him great pain, but he was not surprised but happy. It was just that the timing was not right. He immediately suppressed these useless emotions and practiced the skills with all his strength. Time passed by bit by bit. After an unknown period of time, a small vortex suddenly condensed in Li Zhirui's Danshan, and a whale-swallowing momentum burst out from his body. At the same time, the outside world also reacted. The spiritual energy within a radius of dozens of miles seemed to be guided by something and rushed towards Li Zhirui impatiently. A large amount of spiritual energy entered Li Zhirui's body, constantly expanding the vortex in the golden elixir. A stream of pure mana dripped into the yellow bud, giving birth to the yellow bud. The yellow bud was like a sponge, madly absorbing the huge mana. A small, weak golden sphere gradually took shape on the top of the yellow bud. Next, as long as it is cleansed by the thunder tribulation, my golden elixir will be truly formed. Li Zhirui could feel the existence of the thunder tribulation. If he did not take the initiative to guide it, then the thunder tribulation would take the initiative to fall in 3 days. During these 3 days, Li Zhirui had to do his best to adjust his condition to avoid accidents during the tribulation. One by one, elixirs appeared in front of him, and with the help of a large number of elixirs, Li Zhirui recovered to his peak condition in just 1 day. But he was not in a hurry to receive the tribulation thunder, but began to prepare means to resist the first 2 tribulation thunders. 3 days passed in a flash. Boom! A huge, dark tribulation cloud gathered and formed above Li Zhirui's head. Deafening thunder came from the dark clouds. Countless green lightning snakes, like surging tides, wandered and galloped in the sky, as if the end of the world was coming, giving people a heavy sense of oppression. Li Zhirui flew out of the house and looked at the thunder tribulation above the sky, with a hint of excitement that was difficult to suppress in his eyes. This strange phenomenon immediately attracted the attention of all the monks nearby. As soon as they saw the tribulation cloud, they recognized what was going on. Jidan thunder tribulation, which fellow Taoist is going through the tribulation here? I didn't expect that another fellow Taoist would be born among us. The reactions of the crowd were different. Most of the key training and foundation building cultivators showed envy, while the giant cultivators had no reaction. When the tribulation cloud began to form, the shopkeeper noticed it and muttered to himself, "It's less than a year, and he has to go through the tribulation and break through. It seems that he has been prepared for it and has followers. No wonder he is unwilling to accept the sect's recruitment." Rumble. Accompanied by a thunderous sound that shattered the moving clouds, the first tribulation thunder struck down brazenly. Li Zhirui had a calm face, his hands flew, and he kept casting spells. In an instant, vines appeared out of thin air, covered with thick green leaves. Under his control, a leaf wall was formed. The tribulation thunder fell into it, and immediately shattered countless green leaves, and the wall was also destroyed and broken at a speed visible to the naked eye under the wear and tear of the tribulation thunder. But at the same time, the power of the thunderbolt began to weaken, and finally, under Li Zhirui's active attack, it turned into lightning scattered all over the ground. Boom! The second thunderbolt did not give Li Zhirui any time to react, and it fell suddenly. The speed and power were so fast that it was many times stronger than the first thunderbolt. It seemed to punish him for the offensive behavior of smashing the thunderbolt just now. It was a green dragon with a body several feet thick, extremely fierce, and rushed straight to Li Zhirui with a strong murderous intent. Li Zhirui's face changed slightly. He had seen several golden elixir tribulations, but he had never seen a thunderbolt stronger than his. But at this time, he had no time to think about it, and could only go all out to deal with this thunderbolt. Vines formed various vine dragons, like moths flying into the fire, to meet the green thunder dragon. Chapter 209 Golden Pill. Boom! The blue thunder dragons collided with the vine dragons, and the two were entangled with each other, but the vine dragons were weaker. In just a moment, they were torn into pieces by the thunder. At this time, the thunder was only a few feet away from Li Zhirui, as if it was a ferocious beast in the wilderness, with a bloody mouth, ready to devour people. Is it going to fail? The low-level monks watching nearby saw that Li Zhirui did not make any other moves, thinking that he had run out of options and had no other means. For a while, all kinds of emotions emerged. Some gloated over the misfortune, some felt sorry, and some thought about what would happen if they were the ones who survived the tribulation. But how could Li Zhirui give up so easily? He saw his 10 fingers flying, like a butterfly flying through flowers, and quickly pinched out an extremely complex spell. The mana in his body poured out crazily. In the blink of an eye, the shadows of giant trees emerged, bringing the surroundings into a primitive ancient forest. "This is actually," a certain monk with extraordinary knowledge shouted in surprise, "the most difficult spell to learn in the second level, Greenlight Phantom." Greenlight Phantom is a spell with extremely high learning difficulty, but it is very effective. It can be used to attack, trap enemies, and defend. And from its name, it can also be seen that this spell can also cast illusions. Although it is not particularly outstanding in all aspects, it is very comprehensive. It is precisely because of this that the learning difficulty is so high. and few monks will invest a lot of time in this aspect. In addition to these giant trees, Li Zhirui also deliberately added a large number of thick-leaved vines throughout the ancient forest to enhance the defensive ability of this spell. At the moment the ancient forest was born, the robbery thunder broke into it. The two collided with each other, and the power of the robbery thunder was constantly worn away and reduced. The same was true for Li Zhirui's attack, and the speed was faster. Bang! In order to survive this disaster safely, Li Zhirui controlled the spell to self-destruct, trying to perish with the robbery thunder. The powerful shock wave set off a hurricane, causing dust and smoke to fly all around. Fortunately, the location of the retreat cave is relatively remote, and the neighbors are far enough away, so there is no need to worry about the destruction of a large number of buildings and the collection of spiritual stones afterwards. Soon the smoke and dust dissipated, and Li Zhirui slowly appeared. It seemed that except for the excessive consumption of mana and a pale face, everything else was fine. It seems that this Taoist friend of unknown origin is about to successfully form a pill. The shopkeeper couldn't help but sigh when he saw this scene. It is true that the third thunderbolt is very dangerous, but that is for ordinary cultivators. For a cultivator like Li Zhirui who has a firm heart of Taoism, not to mention that he has also practiced a method of visualization, the third thunderbolt is nothing at all. So when the last thunderbolt fell, Li Zhirui calmly and steadily guided the thunderbolt into the Danshan, to be precise, into the golden pill above the yellow bud that seemed to be real. Hualala, a weak thunderbolt power spread throughout the golden pill. Under Li Zhirui's best control. With the help of the power of the thunderbolt, the golden pill was carefully tempered, and it was also becoming more solid little by little. After an unknown amount of time, the power of the third thunderbolt was exhausted, and the calamity clouds in the sky also transformed into a stream of rich spiritual energy, which rushed into Li Zhirui's body frantically. The golden elixir, which was originally only the size of a grain of rice, expanded very quickly under the irrigation of this huge spiritual energy, and finally stopped at the size of an inch. Li Zhirui was very satisfied with this. You know, whether it was Li Shiking or Li Shilian, their golden elixir after forming the elixir was far inferior to his. Buzz, a unique pressure of a golden elixir cultivator emanated from Li Zhirui's body, which was a signal to the nearby cultivators. Success, this fellow Taoist, senior, it's really amazing, you actually broke through the golden elixir so smoothly, it's amazing. Since Li Zhirui broke through the golden elixir, he naturally could not be treated as a peer, but should be regarded as a powerful senior. After all, his previous performance in dealing with the thunderbolt began to fall into the eyes of all cultivators. Li Zhirui was not a cultivator from Qingshan State, so after successfully forming the elixir, he flashed into the cave residence and activated a defensive formation by the way to block the sight of those people. This operation made all the cultivators stunned, because according to the usual practice, Li Zhirui should explain a little about the experience of forming a golden elixir to everyone, but who would have thought that he didn't care about this matter at all and went back to the quiet room to consolidate his realm. Let's go. If we had known it would be like this, we shouldn't have wasted these few hours. Everyone left one after another. Although they didn't dare to express their dissatisfaction openly, they didn't know how many times they cursed in their hearts. At this time, Li Zhirui didn't care about the situation outside at all. He now wanted to check his golden elixir and find the magical power he got from the dark. It is rumored that if a cultivator forms a golden elixir before the age of 100, he may get a divine power given by heaven, and Li Zhirui was lucky enough to successfully get one of the magical powers. Water and wood divine light, a simplified magical power of the 5 elements divine light, is very powerful and is a killing magical power. Although Li Zhirui wanted a defensive magical power more, it was obviously not his choice, so he could only make do with it. In addition to this magical power, there is also the golden elixir true fire that a golden elixir cultivator must have. However, it may be because he has just broken through, so the true fire looks relatively weak, but even so, the lethality of the true fire is not weaker than that of the ordinary third-level spiritual fire. At the same time, the true fire can also be used to refine spiritual pills and magic tools, but unfortunately, Li Zhirui learned water alchemy and has a good attainment. Although he can learn fire alchemy now, there is no need. As for magic tools, he has never learned them. After all, if nothing unexpected happens, he will not need to use its formation except when refining his own spiritual treasure. After checking the golden elixir, Li Zhirui began to absorb spiritual energy and transform mana to consolidate his realm. Time passed quickly, and 4 or 5 months passed quickly. On this day, the long-sealed door was finally opened. I don't know what the situation of Deking and Zhaoking is, Li Zhirui muttered to himself, thinking about flashing into the space. When he was crossing the tribulation before, he was worried that the tribulation thunder would hurt them, so he put it in the space. Then because of his breakthrough, Deking and Zhaoking received a large amount of mana feedback, and they are still working hard to refine it. Perhaps when they succeed in refining, their cultivation will be greatly improved, especially Deking, who may be able to successfully break through to the late stage of foundation building. As expected, when he entered the space, Deking and Zhaoking were still working hard to refine the mana. After all, this was the mana from the giant cultivators, which was higher than the foundation building in all aspects, so the difficulty of refining was naturally higher. Since we have successfully broken through, it's time to return to the family. Li Zhirui checked the various spiritual medicines and prepared to return to Banyan Island, even though this cave residence would not expire for more than half a year. Thank you for your support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 210 Fool. Although Zhaoking is now in seclusion, Li Zhirui can now fly without the help of external objects. This is the symbol of flying in the air for giant cultivators. Low-level cultivators need to rely on external objects to fly in the air, but giant cultivators do not need to. As long as the mana in their bodies is sufficient, they can fly at will. Li Zhirui left the cave the next day. On the way out of the city, low-level cultivators avoided him one after another to avoid colliding with a newly promoted giant. In fact, he could fly at a low altitude and leave the fairy city directly, because after reaching the giant realm, many constraints could no longer restrain them. However, because he had never practiced it and was worried about making a fool of himself in front of everyone, Li Zhirui chose to walk. Fellow Taoist, please stay, a hurried voice came into Li Zhirui's ears. Because the person who called him was also a giant cultivator, he still gave the other party a face and stopped to wait for a while. I, Anyangkang, have met fellow Taoist, a giant in a grey robe with some grey hair walked quickly to Li Zhirui and bowed. Wang Xiaoming greets you, Li Zhirui returned the greeting. Because he didn't know his purpose, he gave a fake name for safety. What do you want to do? This is not a place for conversation. Why don't you come with me to the restaurant next door? Li Zhirui had no objection. He followed him into the restaurant next door, opened a private room, and ordered a few pots of steak and a few plates of spiritual food. And Yongkang saw that Li Zhirui was not in a hurry at all and was tasting the spiritual food and wine by himself, so he had to keep silent and wait for the opportunity. After 3 rounds of wine, Yongkang said, I don't know if you have heard of the 5 Elements Secret Realm. I have heard of it, but I don't know much about it. Li Zhirui put down his chopsticks and shook his head. He only knew that this secret realm was rich in 5 element spiritual objects, and it was a 3rd-level secret realm, jointly controlled by the 3 major forces of Qingshan Prefecture, and he didn't know anything else. In a few years, the secret realm will be open once every 100 years. I wonder if you have any ideas about this. Li Zhirui was immediately alert. The 5 elements secret realm was firmly controlled by the 3 major forces. Even if some quotas were released, how could they be given to him for no reason? Dao are thinking wrong, and Yongkang saw his reaction and said with a smile, I am just an ordinary casual cultivator. How can I get a quota for the secret realm? Then Dao is. Li Zhirui vaguely guessed his purpose of looking for him. And Yongkang grinned and said, of course it is to rob and rob. Robbing the rich to help the poor. The cultivators of the sects and families are naturally taken back by their elders, and it is difficult to attack them in groups, but those casual cultivators who are alone don't have so many concerns. Li Zhirui wanted to refuse directly. After all, the casual cultivators who can come out safely from the secret realm full of dangers must have extraordinary strength. Moreover, the other party suddenly came to him, and he might have seen that he had just broken through and his strength was relatively weak, so he planned to kill and rob the treasure again. But when the words came to his lips, he changed his words and said with a smile, aren't we? The cultivators who are not well off, the poor people who need relief, okay, and Yongkang was overjoyed. As he spoke, he took out a communication talisman and said, when the time comes, You and I will join forces and we will be invincible. Li Zhirui took it with a smile, and did not stay any longer. He stood up and said goodbye, ready to leave. Since you are busy, I won't bother you. After sending Li Zhirui out of the private room, Anyangkang sat back down again, his eyes flashing, and I don't know what he was thinking. Li Zhirui used his magic power to attach to his hand and played with a communication talisman. He laughed in his heart. Did the other party treat him as a fool? When he left the city, his right hand loosened slightly, and the communication talisman fell down, drifting away with a breeze. It was because there were tricks left by Anyangkang in the communication talisman. He wanted to take advantage of Li Zhirui's breakthrough, and his strength was not strong enough to kill him directly. As for why Anyangkang was targeting him, Li Zhirui also had some guesses in his mind. It was nothing more than that when he rented the cave, he took out hundreds of thousands of spirit stones, and then left early without waiting for the expiration date. This tycoon behavior attracted his attention. You know, for most giant and casual cultivators, hundreds of thousands of spirit stones may be their entire wealth. And from Anyangkang's appearance and clothes, it can be seen that he is not that rich. Speaking of which, after Li Zhirui walked out of the fairy city, he began to use his magic power and fly with the wind. At first, his speed was not fast, but after he got familiar with it, his speed slowly increased. But if compared with Zhao Qing's flying speed, he can surpass him in a short time, but over time, the speed will inevitably slow down, because Li Zhirui relies on magic power to fly, while Zhao Qing is born with talent. Anyangkang waited for a moment, and then began to use the secret method to contact the communication talisman. He walked quickly along the induction with excitement on his face, but the more he walked, the more he felt something was wrong. Damn it, when he saw the communication talisman fall into a stinky ditch, he roared in anger. Unfortunately, Li Zhirui had already left the fairy city at this time, and it was impossible to find him. With the sun and the moon running, Li Zhirui returned to the big Banyan Island in just one day. He entered the clan land quietly, ready to give Li Shiking and others a surprise, but he didn't expect to meet Li Zhizhen on the way. Zhirui, you came out of retreat. As he spoke, he felt something was wrong. After thinking carefully, he shouted in shock, No, Zhirui, you broke through the golden elixir. This sentence immediately attracted the attention of the nearby clansmen. No matter what they were doing, they put down their work at the first time and gathered around. Zhirui, when did you break through? Uncle Zhirui, aren't you in retreat in the family? Why don't you need to pass the tribulation to break through? Uncle Zhirui has broken through the golden elixir now. We don't have to be afraid of Yuan Mingzong anymore. The clansmen talked at once and asked dozens of questions in a moment. Yes, faced with these questions, Li Zhirui was somewhat helpless, and for a moment he didn't know which question to answer. Such a big commotion also attracted the attention of Li Shiking. With a sweep of his spiritual sense, he discovered an unexpected figure. He couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and then hurriedly rushed out of the quiet room and flew in front of everyone. Good. When he saw Li Zhirui and his cultivation with his own eyes, Li Shiking was so excited that he couldn't speak. Congratulations, Zhirui, for forming the golden elixir. Li Zhizhen then remembered that he hadn't congratulated yet, and hurriedly added a sentence. Other tribesmen also spoke up to express their sincere blessings to Li Zhirui, and each of them had an excited face. In the end, it attracted all the tribesmen to come and surrounded Li Zhirui. Thank you for your support. Chapter 211 Shock. It's been a year or two, why haven't we heard anything about the Li family? The head of the Yuanming sect asked in confusion at a meeting. It's possible that the Li family deliberately released a false news to make us confused and buy more time for development. After all, it's not so easy to break through the Jinden, an elder said with a sneer. He had previously thought that the news that Li Zhirui was going to break through the Jinden was false, but unfortunately no one believed it at the time. Some elders also began to waver. It was what he said, how could it be so easy to break through the Jinden? If it was easy, how could Yuanming sect have only produced 3 Jindens until now, and one of them was promoted by swallowing the Jinden? Head, it's less than 2 years, it's not that fast to break through, right? Moreover, even if the news was false, could they attack the Li family? Although the strength of the Li family was slightly inferior, if the two families really fought, it would definitely be a lose-lose ending. And this was obviously something that neither family wanted to see. But at this moment, a foundation-building disciple suddenly shouted outside, Master, elders, I have something important to report. "Come in." The disciple rushed in instantly, not caring about anything else, and said directly, "Master, the Li family has spread the news that Li Zhirui has successfully formed a golden elixir, and will hold a golden elixir formation ceremony on the Banyan Island in half a month. This is impossible." "Absolutely impossible," the elder in charge of monitoring the Li family quickly retorted. "I have never seen a thunderbolt fall on the Banyan Island. How could ye break through the golden elixir?" But at this time, no one paid attention to this elder, and everyone was shocked by the news. Especially the elder who said that the Li family was spreading false news before, his face flushed with shame. No one doubted the news, because since the Li family dared to make it public, it must be true, otherwise the Li family would lose all their face. The Li family, the master paused for a long time, and finally said bitterly, "It is really favored by the heaven. In just a few decades, it has grown from a foundation-building family to the point where there are 3 golden elixirs now. If we talk about the number of giant and cultivators, even Yuan Mingzong is not as good as the other party." Of course, Yuan Mingzong is not afraid. After all, Zheng Xianming is in the middle stage of Jiandan, and there are so many foundation-building disciples under his tutelage, and the foundation is deeper than that of the Li family. But it is inevitable that he feels uncomfortable, as well as envious and jealous. It seems that from now on, the Li family can be on an equal footing with us, but if the Li family maintains the current rate of enhancement, I am afraid that within 50 years, it will completely surpass Yuan Mingzong. As for why Li Zhirui broke through without thunder tribulation, it is nothing more than that he did not retreat on the Banyan Island, and outsiders naturally had no idea about his breakthrough. Of course, there is no point in entangling with this now. Once the news of Li Zhirui's breakthrough to the Jiandan spread, not only Yuan Mingzong, but all nearby forces and cultivators were shocked. Time quickly came to half a month later. On this day, the whole Banyan Island was decorated with joy, and red lanterns were hung everywhere. All the tribesmen had bright smiles on their faces. The ceremony was more grand than when Li Shiking and Li Shilian were alone. Li Zhirui had wanted to stop it. After all, this was beyond the 2 elders, but he was rejected by the 2 elders without hesitation, and they didn't care about it. Because in their opinion, Li Zhirui represented the future and hope of the Li family, and they wished to hold more such grand ceremonies. One by one, the guests came to the door, and the weaker forces were full of flattery, because they knew that Yuan Mingzong could no longer suppress the Li family. And the Jiandan monks like Yuan Mingzong and Shenli Mountain were also much more enthusiastic than before. After all the guests arrived, plates of spiritual food with good color, fragrance and taste were served. In terms of food, it was no different from the previous 2 Jiandan ceremonies. The difference is that the Li family spent a lot of money to invite a music and dance troupe. These musicians and dancers all have cultivation skills, and they practice the unconventional skills of spiritual music and spiritual dance, which can relax the cultivators and eliminate distracting thoughts. This music and dance troupe alone cost tens of thousands of spiritual stones, which is more expensive than the banquet this time. Some cultivators from small forces stared at the dancers on the stage, thinking that the gifts they sent this time were very cost-effective. After 3 rounds of wine, the Jiandan cultivator of Shenli Mountain suddenly said, "It is said that a 100-year-old Jiandan cultivator can obtain a divine power granted by heaven. I remember that you don't seem to be very old. I wonder if you can use your magical power for us to see." Many cultivators heard this rumor for the first time, and they all looked up at Li Zhirui. It is also rumored that with the family business and heritage of Shenli Mountain, isn't there a 100-year-old Jiandan? And among them, isn't there anyone with divine power? A glimmer of light flashed in Li Zhirui's eyes. Seeing that the Li family is powerful, Shenli Mountain is ready to attract hatred to the Li family? I'm sorry to disappoint you, my fortune is shallow, I haven't been favored by the heaven, and I don't have any divine powers, Li Zhirui said bitterly. But the other party's attention was not all on Li Zhirui. He was still observing Li Shiking, Li Shilian and others. Seeing that they all had disappointed expressions, they probably believed this statement. But what he didn't know was that Li Zhirui forgot to tell the 2 elders about this matter, and Li Shiking and the others didn't remember it either. After all, they only heard Li Shiting mention it at the beginning. Don't be sad, fellow Taoist, this is rare. With your talent, even if you don't have divine powers, I think you can do a lot in the future. Li Zhirui couldn't help but feel moved when he heard this. He always felt that there was something else in this sentence, but he didn't ask further. After all, asking further would not result in any result, and it might be exposed by the other party, so he just smiled reluctantly. At this time, the banquet was coming to an end. After the music and dance troupe left, it was Li Zhirui's turn to preach. Like the two elders, he did not talk about his cultivation experience, but chose to talk about his experience and insights in magic, as well as some combat experience. Half an hour later, Li Zhirui closed his mouth, and the outsiders stood up and said goodbye and left. The messy banquet hall was naturally cleaned up by special clansmen. Li Zhirui followed Li Shiking and Li Shilian to the back hall. Do you really not have a divine power, or did you deceive that person? Li Shiking asked. He was a little unwilling. After all, a divine power could very likely determine the direction of a battle, and he felt that with Li Zhirui's talent, it was impossible that he did not have a divine power. Second Grandpa really has a sharp eye? Li Zhirui smiled. Chapter 212 Difficulties. My God-given magical power is called Water and Wood Divine Light. It is an attacking magical power. Water and wood are mutually beneficial. Its power may not be as strong as other magical powers, but it is very long-lasting and difficult to deal with, Li Zhirui explained, and the divine light is invisible and can change as you wish. It is suitable for me. Li Shiking and the others did not ask further questions after hearing this. After all, it was not easy to let Li Zhirui demonstrate on the spot. Zhirui, after you break through the Jindan, you can contract a spirit beast. What do you need for this? Li Shiking suddenly asked another question. Li Zhirui had not had time to think about this question. Now that he was asked by him, he thought about it seriously for a moment, and finally shook his head and said, let it go. I now have Daking and Zhaoking, which is enough. It's not that Li Zhirui doesn't have enough resources. He has a space in his hand and is not short of cultivation resources. You know, because he broke through the Jindan, the area and spiritual energy of the space have increased a lot again. Its area has doubled, and the spiritual energy is richer than that of an ordinary third-level spirit vein. Moreover, when Daking refines his magic power, he will surely be able to successfully break through the late stage of foundation building. At that time, he should prepare for Daking to form a golden elixir. He does not have so much time and energy to take care of a young spirit beast. Of course, if I meet a suitable spirit beast, I will also find a way to contract with it, for example, the 4th grade spirit beasts of Shumu and Liangsing. It's just that he will not force this matter, and the preciousness of the 4th grade spirit beast can be seen from the fact that Yuan Mingzong took out a 4th grade spirit beast egg in exchange for a golden elixir. Since you have a plan, I won't say much. Originally, Li Shiking wanted to use the power of the family to see if he could meet Li Zhirui's requirements, but now he doesn't need it. And he also saw that Li Zhirui's vision has improved a lot now, and I am afraid that even if the family tries its best, it may not be able to meet these requirements. Zhirui, what are you going to do next? Li Shilian asked on the side. He had already thought about this, and immediately said, I plan to refine my life magic weapon first, and try to refine the 3rd level elixir, life magic weapon? Have you prepared all the materials? Li Zhirui nodded. He had obtained many precious spiritual objects during his training trips. The life magic weapon he wanted to refine was based on the 4th level spiritual object, the 1,000-year-old purple-veined green bamboo. When he got the purple-veined green bamboo from the secret realm, he invested a lot of spiritual stones in cultivating it. He spent hundreds of thousands of spiritual stones on it, and finally got a 4th level spiritual bamboo. It was mainly composed of the 10,000-year-old wood heart, obtained from the Jindan cultivator who wanted to take over Li Zhirui's body, and supplemented by the 3rd level spiritual objects such as cloud mud, 1,000 knots of wood whiskers, and 100 jin heavy water. According to Li Zhirui's idea, after the magic weapon was refined, it should be in the shape of a clump of giant bamboos carried by spiritual clouds, attacking and defending through bamboo leaves and roots. And the spiritual clouds below could carry people to fly. Moreover, because it is mainly composed of 2 4th level spiritual objects, the grade of the magic weapon will naturally not be too low. When Li Zhirui breaks through the nascent soul in the future, the grade of the magic weapon will naturally improve, and he does not need to look for spiritual objects and find ways to integrate it. Of course, although this magic weapon is very comprehensive, it also means that there is no outstanding point. After listening to Li Zhirui's description, Li Shiking and the others couldn't help but frown and said, although your idea is good, not to mention how difficult it is to refine, just say that the magic weapon after refining, isn't it a bit mediocre? For example, Li Shiking's natal magic weapon is a spiritual sword, and Li Zhirui's natal magic weapon is a strange stone bead. The former is an attack magic weapon, and the latter is a defensive, auxiliary magic weapon. Don't I still have decking and zhaoqing? Li Zhirui smiled and said, the cultivators of my Li family have never fought alone. He chose to refine such a comprehensive natal magic weapon mainly to assist him and his two spiritual pets. Since you have considered it, then I will do as you say. Li Zhiqing did not say much, only said, if you are missing any spiritual objects, you can entrust the family to find them. Okay, Li Zhirui nodded in response. If there is nothing else, I will go back first. After leaving the back hall, he did not return to the new cave immediately, because he had broken through the golden elixir. The original courtyard was no longer suitable. Although it was also on the third level spiritual vein, the spiritual energy was not as rich as that in the spiritual cave. Li Zhirui had no opinion on this. After all, it was beneficial to his cultivation. So he cleaned it up a little and went to the spiritual cave assigned to him by the family that day. After a little modification, it became his new cave. Instead, he went to the family's mission hall. He had a few things to entrust the family to help him do. The first thing was naturally the spiritual objects and restrictions that he lacked for refining his life magic weapon, and the second was to buy the third level pill formula and spiritual medicine. This is the benefit of having power. Some trivial things do not need to be done personally. About half a month later, Li Zhirui gathered all the spiritual objects and prohibitions he needed, and began to study in seclusion. Occasionally, he would practice with some low-level spiritual objects to master them faster. As for the purchase of the third-level pill formula and spiritual medicine, the pill formula has not made any progress, mainly because Yuan Mingzhuang is not so generous, and they don't have much accumulation in this area. It can be purchased through the Xuanfa Pavilion and other chambers of commerce, but they ask too high a price, and there are many restrictions, such as only one person can use it and it cannot be passed on to others. Some third-level spiritual medicines can be bought, but not much. And for the future development of the family spent a lot of spiritual stones to buy a lot of third-level spiritual seeds, preparing to build a third-level medicine garden. But now Li Zhirui's energy is all focused on refining his life magic weapon. After he gathered all the things, he never stepped out of the cave again. With a kind of determination to never give up. What exactly is the problem? Li Zhirui looked at the first-level magic weapon in front of him that he didn't like, frowned, and his face was a little ugly. He saw a few bamboos growing in a yellow spiritual cloud, which looked no different from what he had imagined. However, once activated with mana, it did not meet his expectations at all. The bamboo leaves could not attack, the roots were tangled, and the spiritual cloud flew very slowly. In short, they were all shortcomings. It's a pity that the family has no experience in refining equipment. Halfway through his words, Li Zhirui suddenly remembered that there was a genius in the family who was good at refining equipment. Maybe he could help solve these problems. Thinking of this, Li Zhirui could not wait to act, and soon he found Li Chengru. Uncle Jiu, what do you want to talk to me about? Li Chengru asked nervously. His nervousness was not fear or terror, but the nervousness caused by seeing his idol suddenly appear in front of him and being too excited. Relax, I'm looking for you because I have a few questions about refining equipment that I want to consult you about. Li Zhirui used a little trick to make Li Chengru relax involuntarily. Go ahead. Li Chengru gradually calmed down. Thank you for your support. Chapter 213 Attempt. Li Zhirui told all the problems he encountered in refining the weapon one by one, and finally showed the refined magic weapon to Li Chengru and asked, look at what's going on. In Li Chengru's opinion, some of Li Zhirui's questions were the most basic ones. He wanted to speak directly, but was afraid of hurting the other party's face. Li Zhirui saw the clue and smiled. It doesn't matter, just speak frankly, Uncle Jiu, then I'll speak frankly. Li Chengru organized his words to avoid hurting his self-esteem. Like the Junli restriction and the suspension restriction, they conflict with each other, so the flying speed is so slow, and the attack strength of the root system can't meet your requirements. Also, the restrictions such as golden light and sharpness that you want to add are superimposed in the combination, resulting in the restriction not working properly, so the attack power of the bamboo leaves is not strong. In addition, there are various problems such as the incompatibility between the spiritual materials, the need to use other spiritual objects to neutralize them, etc. In short, because of Li Zhirui's high requirements, and he was not a professional refiner, he just wanted to add all of them at once, and the result was naturally unsatisfactory. After listening to Li Chengru's words, Li Zhirui smiled awkwardly. He was indeed a little greedy, and asked humbly, "Then do you see if there is any way, Uncle Jiu? Don't you plan to reduce some functions?" Li Chengru frowned and said, "You have too many requirements. Even if you give it to a professional refiner to refine, I'm afraid it won't be easy to refine." Li Zhirui shook his head. He didn't want to give up easily, and said, "It's okay, I'll try to refine it first. If it doesn't work, consider reducing some functions." Li Chengru didn't continue to persuade after hearing this. He pondered for a long time before he put forward his own suggestions. Although he has a very high talent for refining, he is limited by his cultivation and family background, so he can only give some basic suggestions. In other words, there is no problem in theory now, but if you really start refining, the result is unknown. That's enough. Li Zhirui was very satisfied. It was nothing more than piling up spiritual materials. Some low-level spiritual materials were nothing to him. He could just refine a few furnaces of spiritual pills. After all, with his current giant in realm cultivation, there was almost no possibility of failure in refining the second-level spiritual pills. "I don't need these bottles of spiritual pills anymore. You can refine them." Li Zhirui took out a few bottles of high-quality spiritual pills from his stored ring. Although he had obtained the stored ring a long time ago, he was limited by his insufficient cultivation and did not dare to use it openly before. Now it was naturally not a problem. He took out a few bottles of high-quality spiritual pills and sent them to Li Chengru. "Uncle Jiu, I'm just talking about it on paper. It doesn't mean I can succeed. There's no need to spend so much money." Li Chengru waved his hands repeatedly. "Take it. Are you afraid that I don't have the elixir?" Li Zhirui said. "Besides, you're in the fire-swallowing toad's cultivation is too low." Logically speaking, with Li Chengru's cultivation, the third-grade spirit beast he contracted, and his family's training, he should have broken through to the middle stage of foundation building, or at least be on the verge of a breakthrough. But it turns out that he still has a long way to go before a breakthrough. The reason is that this brat actually used those resources to exchange for some refining materials to improve his refining skills. Although the improvement of skills can also feed back to cultivation, you should still focus on cultivation and not indulge in refining all day long. Li Zhirui bewitched, "You are only building the foundation now. Even if you refine more magic tools, they are only magic tools. Don't you want to refine the third-level magic weapon yourself? And after the magic weapon, there are higher-grade 6th-grade spiritual treasures, as well as 9th-grade semi-immortal tools, and even immortal tools. You don't have enough cultivation and can't see their style at all." For Li Chengru, a fool who is obsessed with refining tools, the high-grade magic tools mentioned by Li Zhirui are no less than the tribulation and ascension that all cultivators dream of, and even exceed it. "Uncle Jiu, you are right. I shouldn't just look at the magic tools. There will be more powerful magic weapons and spiritual treasures in the future," Li Chengru said firmly. Li Zhirui nodded with satisfaction. After all, among the current members of the Cheng generation, only Li Chengru is expected to form a pill. As an elder, he naturally hopes that he can have a better future. Of course, it is also possible that Li Zhirui has not been in the family often in recent years, and he does not know the family situation as well as before, so he is not very clear about the Chengzi generation and the next generation of Dazi generation. Although there are no more geniuses with dual spiritual roots among them, there are still many dual spiritual roots with high spiritual root purity. There is even a member of the family who has a special spiritual body called Runchu, which can enhance the affinity with water spirit. The water spells he casts will have a special effect of moisturizing, which is very suitable for the path of spiritual plant husband or animal trainer. Speaking of which, after Li Zhirui returned to the cave, he began to try to refine magic tools day and night. He didn't know how much spiritual materials he would consume every day. Although he had never succeeded, he saw the possibility of success. Because every time he refined a magic tool, the result was better than the last time, and this was enough for Li Zhirui to persist. The years in the mountains are unknown. It seems that in the blink of an eye, several months have passed quietly. G. Duqing, who has been immersed in cultivation since Li Zhirui's breakthrough, finally opened his eyes. And his cultivation, just as Li Zhirui guessed, successfully broke through to the late stage of foundation building. Unfortunately, there is only that nest of giant poisonous bees in the space now, and no one can share his joy with him. As for Zhaqing, he woke up some time ago, and his cultivation successfully broke through the middle stage of foundation building, and now he is playing freely on the Big Banyan Island. Fortunately, Li Zhirui would come in every few days to pick some spiritual medicines to make pills, and soon found Daking. Daking? Li Zhirui shouted with surprise. He didn't expect Daking to wake up suddenly at this time. You know, any spirit beast that has a contract with a cultivator who practices the Wanling Sutra will not have a bottleneck as long as the cultivator successfully breaks through, and will be able to break through smoothly after accumulating enough mana. For Daking, accumulating mana is just a matter of time. After all, with Li Zhirui, the alchemist, there will be no shortage of spiritual pills that increase mana. Of course, the bloodline restrictions of spirit beasts still exist, such as the spirit beasts of Li Shiking and Li Shilian. Even if their masters have broken through the golden elixir for many years, they have not yet broken through the third level. Unless they get some chance in the future, it is possible for them to break through the third level, just as difficult as for cultivators to form a pill. And this is still much easier. If it is a wild second-grade monster, the difficulty of breaking through the third level will at least double. Chapter 214 Inheritance. Finally, all the restrictions have been integrated together. Li Zhirui sighed sincerely as he looked at the magic weapon floating in front of him. He didn't know how many spirit stones and materials he had wasted in order to refine his own life magic weapon. Now he has finally succeeded in refining it. Although the situation in all aspects is still not satisfactory, at least the method is feasible. The next step is to find a way to make the restrictions more compatible, and then he can start refining his life magic weapon. However, at this time, Li Zhirui suddenly arranged for a clan member to knock on the door. Uncle Jiu, the clan leader has something to ask you, the clan member of the Cheng generation said respectfully and politely. Li Zhirui carefully looked at the young man in front of him, only to see that he had a handsome appearance, with a maturity between his eyebrows that was not in line with his age, and the temperament he exuded was also quite calm. Your name is Li Chengmo, right? He had heard Li Zhirui mention it before, but this was the first time he saw him in person. When Li Chengmo heard Li Zhirui calling out his name, a hint of surprise appeared in his eyes. It seemed that he had never thought that he would know him. He replied in a panic, "This is my nephew's name." "Well, not bad. Follow your elder brother and learn well." Li Zhirui understood Li Zhirui's meaning a little. He wanted to train the next clan leader. Calculating the time, Li Zhirui has been the clan leader for more than 20 years. Even for a foundation-building cultivator, this accounts for 1/10 of his total lifespan. Moreover, he has been working diligently and conscientiously for the development of the family over the years. After more than 20 years, he has only just broken through the middle stage of foundation building. It is no longer the value of the foundation building pill that year. So Li Zhirui thinks that there is no problem with Li Zhirui's desire to resign as the clan leader and hand over this important task to others to pursue what he wants in his heart. Yes, Li Chengmo pursed his lips. He knew that his qualifications were not good. If he had not been valued by Li Zhiruin and regarded as one of the candidates for the next clan leader, he would have been like other clan members, busy all day long in order to get a little resource. Moreover, he also realized that the reason why Li Zhiruin sent him to call Li Zhirui was to give him another chance to get Li Zhirui's approval. You know, among the 3 golden elixirs of the Li family, although Li Shiking and Li Shilian have the highest status, Li Zhirui has a very high right to speak, and the 2 elders generally will not refute his words. As it stands now, Li Zhirui has a good impression of him. Thinking of this, Li Chengmo couldn't help but feel a little happy. Let's go. Li Zhirui saw through his thoughts and said softly. The cave is not far from the main hall. In a moment, the 2 arrived at their destination. Brother, what do you want to talk to me about? In a few days, the Xuanfa Pavilion of Qingshan Prefecture will hold a grand auction. Yesterday they specially sent an invitation with some spiritual objects on it. As he said, Li Zhirui handed over the jade slip. Li Zhirui's powerful consciousness swept through it, and instantly remembered all the contents inside, and also understood the purpose of his calling him over. Big brother, do you want me to lead the team to participate in this auction? To be honest, he was really tempted, because there were several third-level pill recipes at the auction, such as the Jinyun pill for increasing mana, the Zunying pill for healing injuries, and the Anan pill for healing the soul. In addition, there were many other good things. It can be seen that Xuanfa Pavilion really spent a lot of money this time. Yes, the 2 elders are not very willing to go, and you are better at this. Li Zhiruin nodded and smiled. Your Uncle Jiu has very good luck. Every time he goes to the auction, he can find bargains. You should go to him more often. Maybe you can get some luck." Li Chengmo didn't know how to respond, so he could only smile politely. The matter of luck is too illusory. Even higher-level cultivators can't tell for sure, let alone you and me. Li Zhirui shook his head, but then changed the subject and said, "But if you have any problems in cultivation, feel free to come to me." Li Zhizhen knew that with Li Zhirui's wit, he would definitely be able to see the purpose of sending Li Chengmo over. He thought Li Zhirui didn't like him after the first sentence, but he didn't expect there would be a completely different second sentence. "Ha ha ha ha, you are lucky." "Yes," Li Chengmo replied with excitement. Li Zhirui asked curiously, "Brother, do you know why Xuanfa Pavilion is so willing to auction so many good things? I heard that it seems that a powerful chamber of commerce from other continents has come and is preparing to settle in Dongzhou. Xuanfa Pavilion naturally doesn't want to have another strong opponent. Other continents?" Li Zhirui's heart moved slightly. He roughly knew the situation in this world. In addition to Dongzhou where there were 4 continents: South, West, North, and Central. Among the 5 continents, the East continent is inhabited by immortals, demons and monsters. The South continent is the territory of the monsters. The West continent is the territory of the demons. The North continent is very cold and poor, where immortals, demons and monsters are rare. The Central continent is the territory of the cultivators, and it is also the land with the richest spiritual energy, the largest territory and the strongest strength. That's all he knew. After all, the Li family was located in the easternmost part of the East continent, too far away from the other continents, and the family foundation was not enough. It was the first time he heard about the news from other continents. Doesn't that mean that the other Chamber of Commerce will also hold an auction to compete with the Xuanfa Pavilion? Li Zhirui's eyes lit up. Li Zhizhen was stunned, and followed his thoughts and said, "It is possible. You can go and have a look at it. Anyway, you can earn spirit stones again, but if you miss this opportunity, you will never meet these spirit objects again in the future." "I will go when the auction starts," Li Zhirui asked. "I will take those clansmen with me. Please arrange it for me, big brother." "Okay." Li Zhirui nodded, and said goodbye and returned to the cave. He was going to try his best to see if he could refine his life magic weapon before the auction. But unfortunately, until the auction started, his life magic weapon was not refined. Forget it. Li Zhirui reluctantly put away all kinds of precious spirit objects and set off to the main hall to prepare to meet with the clansmen who participated in the auction. But what he didn't expect was that there were several juniors he knew in that group of people, including Li Chengru and Li Chengmo. There was no need to check their cultivation. Just from this point, you can see that these people are the juniors who are focused on training by the family. "Are all the people here?" Li Zhirui looked at Li Zhizhen. Li Zhizhen showed a trace of embarrassment on his face, and said awkwardly, "There is another brat, Chengmo, bring that brat Li Chenglin to me." There was a hint of anger in his tone. "Uncle, I'm coming." Li Zhirui looked in the direction of the voice and saw a young male cultivator in blue clothes, with messy hair and sleepy eyes, running towards the crowd yawning. "Who is this person?" Li Zhirui asked with interest. "Thank you for your support." Chapter 215 Pressure. "Hello, Uncle Jiu. My name is Li Chenglin, Shuangmulan. I'm 19 years old. I like to sleep and don't like anything that requires exercise. The person I admire most is you." Li Zhirui looked a little strange. He had never seen such a lively and calm junior who could treat him calmly, but this kid was smart. He knew when to stop and even praised him in the end. "You stinky boy, I specially notified you yesterday and asked you to come early today. It seems that you didn't listen at all." Li Zhizhen spoke first, rushed to his side, and pulled his ears hard. "It seems that you like him very much, big brother," Li Zhirui said meaningfully. If not for this, he would not have made such a move. After all, he had already taught Li Chenglin a lesson, and it would be inappropriate for Li Zhirui to do it again. Ho ha, this kid is quite interesting, but he is a little too lazy. He thinks about how to be lazy all day long." Li Zhizhen laughed. Li Zhirui did not comment on this, and said, "Since everyone is here, let's set off." "Wait. These are the spiritual stones accumulated by the family in recent years. If you see any spiritual objects that the family needs, just buy them back." Li Zhirui took the stored ring and scanned it with his spiritual sense. Even with his state of mind, he could not help but be shocked. In the huge space, Spiritual stones that shone with spiritual light piled up into small hills, with at least millions of spiritual stones. I didn't expect the family to become so rich, Li Zhirui sighed from the bottom of his heart. You know, although the number of clan members has increased a lot, the spiritual fields on the Banyan Island have not been fully developed, so the 3 spiritual islands are still rented to casual cultivators, Li Zhirui explained with a smile. In addition, there are also various spiritual objects refined by the family to sell in the redwood market, as well as the rent of the shops in the market. The accumulated amount is a considerable amount of spiritual stones. The most important thing is that the Li family has now built a self-sufficient system. Except for some precious spiritual objects, most of them no longer need to be purchased from other places. Then we'll go first. After saying that, Li Zhirui used his magic power to lift everyone up, took them on the family's spirit ship, and flew southwest. Perhaps because of the presence of Li Zhirui, the elder, the younger generations were a little reluctant to let go, and they were all very restrained. Seeing this, Li Zhirui left a message for them to take care of the flying direction of the spirit ship, and then turned and entered the cabin. Huh? Uncle Jiu is really too much pressure on people. Yeah, I don't dare to speak in front of him. Me too. Uncle Jiu looks very gentle, but I just don't dare to speak. This sentence immediately resonated with everyone, and they all spoke up. Li Chenglin rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "You are saying bad things about Uncle Jiu here, aren't you afraid that he is using his spiritual sense to explore now?" As soon as these words came out, the scene was instantly silent, especially the few clansmen who had just complained. They were all scared pale. Don't you know that Chenglin likes to tease people? And Uncle Jiu is a very good person. Li Shengmo saw that their faces were really not good, and hurriedly spoke out. Brother Mo, have you had any contact with Uncle Jiu in private? Li Chenglin suddenly asked. Well, the tribe members asked me to call Uncle Jiu a few days ago. The others were immediately curious when they heard this, and all kinds of questions came out of their mouths. And all of this fell into the eyes of Li Zhirui, who was in the cabin, observing the surroundings with his spiritual sense. The spiritual ship was very fast, and it took only half a day to arrive at the fairy city where the auction was held. Golden Dan Cultivator, as soon as Li Zhirui appeared, he attracted the attention of all the cultivators. The originally crowded crowd quickly separated a path for him to enter the fairy city. The Li family members behind Li Zhirui were all proud of it, and followed him into the fairy city with their heads held high. Although they knew that the status of the Golden Dan Cultivator was lofty, it was far less shocking than seeing it with their own eyes and experiencing it personally. And this is one of the reasons why Li Zhirui wanted Li Zhirui to take them with him. In addition, he also wanted them to broaden their horizons and not limit their horizons because they had stayed on the daring island for a long time. Practice hard, and one day, you will also become a respected existence. Li Zhirui's voice rang in their minds. For these juniors, this sentence inspired them and planted a seed symbolizing the future in their hearts. As for whether it can grow into a towering tree, it depends on whether they can persevere in watering it with hard work and sweat. Senior Li, welcome to Bring It, a foundation building cultivator said respectfully in front of the auction house. Li Zhirui nodded slightly and said, go directly to the room and give me a detailed list of auction items. It should be okay, right, Senior, please follow me. The list has been placed in the room. Under the leadership of this person, the group walked to the 3rd floor and entered a spacious and exquisitely decorated private room. Senior, if you need anything, just tell me. After saying that, seeing that Li Zhirui did not speak, he tactfully withdrew. Sit down. After saying this, Li Zhirui concentrated on flipping through the list of thousands of spiritual objects. Needless to say, there were also a few 3rd-level pill recipes, as well as various rare 3rd-level spiritual objects, and inheritances of various cultivation techniques. Among them, 1st-level spiritual objects accounted for 45%, 2nd-level spiritual objects accounted for 30%, and 3rd-level spiritual objects accounted for the remaining 20%. The last 5 auction items were not on the list, so I guess they were more precious treasures. Li Zhirui focused on the pill recipes and the inheritance of various skills, because he came to the auction this time not for himself, but to represent the Li family. Different needs naturally mean different things. When the auction started, he had already selected several things the family needed. As for himself, he didn't want anything. It wasn't that he had a very high standard, but that he didn't need it now, and the spiritual stones in his hand might not be enough to buy a 3rd-level auction item. The previous auctions were all first-class spiritual objects. If you have anything you want, you can go down and participate, Li Zhirui added, but the spiritual stones given to me by the family will not be lent out. If you encounter a spiritual object you want, but you don't have enough spiritual stones, you can find a way yourself. At the same time, a figure has appeared on the auction table in the hall, a white-bearded foundation-building monk. My humble name is Hu Beifeng. I am honored to meet all the seniors and fellow Taoists. Thank you for your kindness. I will be the auctioneer of this auction. I hope you will support me. After a brief opening speech, Hu Beifeng began to explain the first auction item, a first-class top-grade magic weapon. The key training monks in the auction hall were very excited and asked to participate in the auction one after another. Even several members of the Li family could not help but go down to bid. Such a lively scene means that this auction is already half successful. Thank you for the great reward from Aizuo Fenting Li. Chapter 216 Competition. The scene was very lively, and a large number of key training monks started bidding, causing the price of this top-grade magic weapon to continue to rise, and soon exceeded the highest price of magic weapons, approaching the second-level magic weapon. Soon, this magic weapon was bought by a key training monk for more than 2,500 spirit stones. Most of the auction items that appeared later were magic weapons and talismans, or some spiritual objects that could enhance strength, and very few things like pill recipes appeared. The reason is that most key training monks do not pay much attention to this aspect, or the demand is not so strong. Li Chengmo and others also occasionally bid, but they did not have many spirit stones in their hands, so they did not successfully bid once. As for what Li Zhirui said before, these juniors did not seem to hear the deep meaning of it, and no one has borrowed spirit stones from him so far. Li Zhirui naturally did not remind him, but just closed his eyes and rested, waiting for the auction items needed by the family to appear. The auction items were sold out one after another. Even if they were no relatively cheap first-level spiritual objects, the accumulated spiritual stones were still very terrifying when there were a lot of them. Thank you all for your support. All the first-level spiritual objects have been auctioned off. From the next auction item, it will be the second-level spiritual objects, Hu Beifeng said, and then took out 10 pure white small jade bottles. There is a foundation-building pill in each of these jade plates. In order to save time, the time limit is 15 minutes, and the foundation-building pill will belong to the 10 Taoist friends with the highest bids. As soon as these words came out, all the Kigan cultivators present breathed quickly. If there were no foundation-building cultivators sitting on the stage, I'm afraid there would be bold people rushing up. Li Zhirui raised his eyebrows slightly. Is the other party trying to get everyone to do their best to drive up the price? After thinking for a while, Li Zhirui said, Chengmo, you bid. As long as it does not exceed 90,000 spiritual stones, you can buy as many as you want. Yes, things developed as Li Zhirui thought. As soon as the auction was announced, the price of the foundation building pill soared all the way. It was not until 80,000 spiritual stones that there were fewer competing cultivators. At this time, Li Chengmo bid for the first time and offered a price of 85,000 spiritual stones. However, this price did not stop others from bidding. Li Chengmo had to raise the price and even exceeded 90,000 spiritual stones in the end. Uncle Jiu, this, Li Zhirui shook his head and said, give it up. The family still has a few foundation building pills. There is no need to spend too many spiritual stones here. Li Zhirui did not let Li Chengmo bid for the various second-level spiritual objects after the foundation-building pill, and quietly waited for the third-level spiritual objects. After a few hours, all the second-level spiritual objects were auctioned off. The first third-level spiritual object was the pill formula that Li Zhirui had been waiting for a long time. The next auction item is the recipe for the Jinan pill. This pill can increase the mana of giant cultivators, speed up the cultivation of giant seniors, and can be used as the inheritance of one's own forces to enhance defense. Hu Beifeng said excitedly, the starting price is 100,000 spirit stones, and each bid cannot exceed 5,000 spirit stones, 150,000. As soon as the voice fell, Li Zhirui spoke. As soon as this was said, all the low-level cultivators were shocked, especially those casual cultivators. After all, they probably never saw so many spirit stones in their entire lives. 180,000 spirit stones. Another giant cultivator started bidding. As soon as the two of them spoke, they stopped the other giant cultivators. Perhaps they felt it was not worth it, or perhaps because their forces had similar pale recipes, they did not compete with them. More importantly, this price was almost close to the upper limit of a third-level pale recipe. Li Zhirui frowned. He felt that the voice sounded familiar, but he couldn't remember who it was. He had to suppress his doubts and continued to bid. 200,000 spirit stones, Uncle Jiu, is this price too high? Li Chengmo smacked his lips and asked in a low voice. Li Zhirui shook his head and smiled. Don't think the price is too high. You have to know that this kind of thing used to be hard to come by, and the price of a genuine pill is hundreds of spirit stones. 200,000 spirit stones are enough. One day I will be able to make it back. In another room, someone asked a similar question. Uncle Mingling, is this price too high? Mingling, a giant and cultivator of Yuanming sect, gritted his teeth and said, the other party is the Li family. We must not let them get the recipe of genuine pill. Otherwise, with Li Zhirui's talent for alchemy, he will definitely be able to refine it. The three giant and cultivators of the Li family are improving their cultivation rapidly. What should I do with Yuanming sect at that time? But the sect came here this time for another precious and very important spiritual object. The disciple who spoke up had a sad face, but he didn't dare to speak at all in the face of the furious Mingling. 230,000 spirit stones, Li Zhirui's face didn't look very good. This price was already more than the value of the pill recipe. 240,000 spirit stones, but after thinking about it, he still spoke up, but the price didn't increase much. If the other party bid again, he would give up. Anyway, this is not the only pill recipe for increasing mana. Although the effect is not as good as the genuine pill, can the other party bid against him again? 250,000, Mingling gritted his teeth. Li Zhirui's eyes flashed with a gleam of light. He recognized who the voice was, and said calmly, congratulations to Taoist fellow Mingling for getting what he wished for. Mingling did not attend the dam forming ceremony when he held it before, so he didn't remember it for a while. After a good recollection, he remembered the other party's identity. Hu Beifeng would not care about the grudges between the two giant and cultivators. After waiting for a few breaths and seeing no one bid, he immediately announced, congratulations, senior, you got the genuine pill formula. Bang! A loud noise filled with anger came from Mingling's room. The reason why he was so angry was that he felt that Li Zhirui had guessed his identity long ago and deliberately raised the price to plot against him. Moreover, he had calmed down now and finally remembered the purpose of participating in the auction. He was at a loss for a moment. Hu Beifeng pretended not to hear and continued to introduce the next auction item. Anyway, even if the other party was a giant and cultivator, he would not dare not give spiritual stones. The next few auction items were all third-level spiritual objects, which were dispensable to the Li family, so Li Zhirui did not bid until the second recipe for increasing the mana of giant and cultivators appeared. 200,000 spiritual stones. As soon as Li Zhirui opened his mouth, he blocked many people's mouths. And looking at this posture, everyone knew that he was determined to win, and for a while no one competed with him. In a spiritual stone competition, you may not be able to win, and you may also offend the giant and cultivator. And for a third-level pill recipe, you have to offend the giant and cultivator? It's really unnecessary. As for the Xuanfa Pavilion protecting the auctioneer's information, such talk can only deceive those naive cultivators. Thank you for your support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 217 Epilogue. Perhaps he had tasted the sweetness of high prices before. After all, the higher the price, the more commission he would get. Hu Beifeng asked unwillingly, is there anyone else bidding? Li Zhirui didn't care about it at first, but after waiting for several breaths, Hu Beifeng didn't see him drop the hammer. He snorted coldly and said, what? You're not going to sell this pill formula to me? Hu Beifeng broke out in a cold sweat when he heard this. It was true that he had the support of the Xuanfa Pavilion, a large chamber of commerce, but he was not the only auctioneer in the chamber of commerce. More importantly, his behavior violated the rules of the auctioneers. After this, he might not be able to gain a foothold in the chamber of commerce. Please forgive me, my Xuanfa Pavilion broke the rules this time. You can get a 10% discount on all the spiritual objects you bid this time. The Jinden cultivator of the Zhuanfa Pavilion said. "Thank you very much, my friend." Li Zhirui naturally took advantage of the situation. After all, the Li family did not have the strength to compete with the Zhuanfa Pavilion. At this point, the farce was completely over and the auction continued. Among the later auction items, Li Zhirui participated several times. Each time he bid for spiritual objects, they were all in the category of pill formulas, refining experience, and formation perception, which were used to enhance the family's heritage. Among them, some were successfully won, and some fell into the hands of other golden elixirs because of insufficient spiritual stones. Xingyan pill, Huchen pill, a small set of third-level talismans, and a third-level fire date spiritual tree that can slightly improve the blood of monsters. These are the gains he got from participating in this auction. There is no need to elaborate on the first three. One increases mana, one treats injuries, and one contains runes of 9 third-level talismans. The last fire date spiritual tree is rumored to be a descendant of the innate spiritual root red date. Although it can also improve the blood of monsters, the effect is extremely poor. To describe it specifically, it can only improve it by 1 or 2 points. So although it is a third-level spiritual tree, because it is too tasteless, Li Zhirui bought it at a very low price. For the Li family, this is better than nothing. Li Zhirui also paid a little attention to Yuan Mingzong and found that they were very interested in a spiritual object. Zhengjin spiritual wind. With a little thought, you will know that this spiritual wind was bought by Zhang Xianming. It is unknown whether he wants to refine the spiritual wind to enhance his own strength or use it for cultivation. Li Zhirui also bid up the price at the beginning, but found that there was another Jinden force competing with it, so he just stood by and watched. Although it was later acquired by Yuan Mingzong, the price was bid up to an extremely high price, almost exceeding 30% of the value of the spiritual object. At the same time, Li Zhirui also noticed that among the dozens of Jinden cultivators on the third floor, there were always a few boxes that did not speak, as if they were spectators who stayed out of the matter. After comparing them in his mind, he found that they were top Jinden forces such as Mu Lingzong, Lingayan sect, Zuanhou family, Shenli mountain, etc. Without thinking too much, you can guess that the purpose of their participation in the auction should be those mysterious spiritual objects. Li Zhirui was very curious about those spiritual objects, but he also knew that with the background of the Li family, they were not even qualified to compete, and there was no hope at all. Did you see that the list given to them by Zhuanfa Pavilion did not even write what spiritual objects they were? Next, it's the last item of the third-level auction item, the Jinden. As soon as Hu Beifeng finished speaking, the foundation building cultivators on the second floor poked their heads out one after another, especially those gray-haired late-stage foundation building cultivators. The crazy desire in their eyes made people shudder. If it weren't for the Zhuanfa Pavilion's garrison Jinden who came forward in time to shock everyone, there might really be some desperate people among them. Although they couldn't really get the Jinden, it was the Zhuanfa Pavilion that was embarrassed by such a thing. What a pity. The family spirit stones are not enough. Li Zhirui shook his head. He brought nearly 1 million spirit stones from his family, but now there are only a few 100,000 left. Moreover, he didn't know in advance that Zhuanfa Pavilion was so willing to auction off such a treasure as the Jinden. The competition for the Jinden was more intense than any other spiritual object before, especially for those foundation-building families, who probably took out everything in the family just to get this Jinden. Yuan Mingzong, who had never spoken again, also ended up this time. It was just that maybe because he had blocked the Li family once, spent more than 200,000 spiritual stones on the Jinden recipe, and bought a spiritual wind at a high price, so he soon fell silent. Hiss, Li Chengmo and other juniors listened to the offer outside and couldn't help but take a breath. Oh my god, 600,000 spiritual stones. Li Zhirui smiled and said, a Jinden cultivator has a lifespan of 500 years. 600,000 spiritual stones can buy more than 300 years of lifespan. This is such a good deal. In the end, this Jinden was bought by a Jinden force at a sky-high price of 840,000. After the dust settled on the golden core formation, Hu Beifeng left the stage sadly. A middle-aged male golden core cultivator came up and said concisely, the next spiritual objects will be auctioned by me. There are 9 spiritual objects in total. Let me introduce them to you one by one. The first one is a 4th-level yellow-horned unicorn egg with some unicorn blood. As you all know, the unicorn clan is our lucky beast, and its blood also has a certain auspicious power. and the auspicious power of the yellow-horned unicorn clan lies on the earth. The place where this beast stays for a long time will become an extremely fertile spiritual field, which is very suitable for planting spiritual objects. Li Zhirui, who had not been tempted by the golden core formation before, stared at the huge earth yellow beast egg this time, his eyes full of eagerness. Such a high-grade and powerful spiritual beast is what the Li family has always wanted, but they have never found it. Now they have encountered it, but they have no ability to bring it back to the Li family. Such a top-grade spiritual beast, who knows which Taoist friend will get it? Li Zhirui had a thought of killing people to rob treasures. He did not think there was anything wrong with this thought. Because this is a world where the weak are the prey of the strong, and the strong are respected. But after knowing the power that got a beast egg, he instantly gave up the idea of killing people to rob treasures, because that power was the Wood Spirit sect, one of the top giant sects. The second auction item was the 4th level spiritual object Qian Shanghai Unlao. And the third auction item was the 3rd level top-grade magic weapon King Long Treasure Orb. Every auction item made Li Zhirui excited, but unfortunately he was short of money and did not even have the qualifications to ask for it. He could only watch them being bought by other cultivators. The last auction item of this auction is the cultivation experience of a Yuanying cultivator. Li Zhirui heard this and looked up suddenly. How could this be possible? Although Xuanfa Pavilion, as a top-level chamber of commerce spanning several states, has many Yuanying cultivators, it has never been heard that they would auction the cultivation experience of Yuanying cultivators. It seems that in order to stop the big chambers of commerce from other continents, Xuanfa Pavilion has spent a huge amount of money this time. Chapter 218 Adventure. But it should be only this kind of good stuff that will attract top giant forces such as Shanli Mountain and Muling sect to participate in the auction? Although Shanli Mountain had Yuanying before, there must be a lot of Yuanying cultivators' cultivation experience left in the sect, but they haven't seen a new Yuanying cultivator for more than 100 years. Now there is a way to find another way, so naturally they don't want to miss it. And forces like Muling sect, they were originally vassals of the Yuanying sect, and later rebelled because the main sect was weak. They may lack this kind of foundation. It's not easy to encounter the cultivation experience of Yuanying cultivators, so how can they let it go? If nothing unexpected happens, the competition for this experience will be extremely fierce. 2 million spirit stones, Xuanhou family took the lead in bidding. Even though Li Zhirui had expected it in his heart still jumped hard after hearing this price. 2 million spirit stones, even if the Li family's current income has skyrocketed, it is only 1 million spirit stones a year. This opening is the net income of the Li family for 2 years. And this is just the first bid, the final transaction price is definitely more than this number. Next, it was time for each family to take turns bidding. The price of spirit stones skyrocketed. In just a moment, it had risen to 18.5 million spirit stones. Not many forces were still competing at this point. After all, they were so big and powerful that it was impossible for them to take out all their spirit stones to buy a copy of the experience of the nascent soul cultivator. If they could get it by spending all their money, it would be worth it if they could successfully break through. But if they failed to break through, wouldn't these more than 10 million spirit stones be wasted? As for Li Zhirui and other cultivators, they were numb. For most cultivators, let alone a lifetime, even 10 lifetimes would not necessarily give them so many spirit stones. 20 million spirit stones, the giant cultivator of Shanli Mountain said in a deep voice. In addition, the Nanya Chamber of Commerce is not allowed to open a store in the territory of Shanli Mountain. Nanya Chamber of Commerce? Li Zhirui secretly wrote down the name, and was also surprised by the decisiveness of Shanli Mountain. For an illusory opportunity, they were willing to defend a top cross-state chamber of commerce. But if it were him, Li Zhirui thought about it seriously. If nothing unexpected happened, he would make the same decision as Shanlishan. After this, the forces such as Mu Lingzhuang stopped talking. They were a little hesitant, wondering if it was worth it. Besides, Xuanfa Pavilion had taken out so many good things to stop Nanya Chamber of Commerce. If Nanya Chamber of Commerce wanted to enter Qingshan Province, how could they not take out some good things? Maybe they would also take out the experience of cultivating the nascent soul? With this thought in mind, they watched Shanlishan take this experience into his pocket. The dust has settled. With this jade slip falling into the hands of Shanlishan, the auction that lasted for 3 days has come to a complete end. Let's go. Things are not really over yet. Li Zhirui stood up and said to Li Chengmo and others who were still in shock. The things in the auction are over, but they have just begun outside. Those cultivators who had been ambushed at various intersections were already ready to move and ready to pounce at any time. So that every time an auction ends, it is the most chaotic moment in an area. During this period of time, almost no casual cultivator dares to leave the fairy city. Li Zhirui also noticed that Li Chenglin, a somewhat strange boy, looked very surprised, but in fact it was all pretending. From the first time he saw Li Chenglin, he felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't find out what was wrong. Possession? Li Zhirui has never thought of such a thing, because all the members of the Li family are now on the life card, although it is the lowest level of life card, which can only store a wisp of soul and observe the life and death of the person. If Li Chenglin was possessed by someone, his life card would be broken at the first time, and the family would know about it, but obviously, this did not happen. Li Chenglin felt Li Zhirui's inquiring eyes, and his heart shuddered. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. He knew that with his acting skills, he would definitely not be able to hide it from the smartest uncle in the family. Maybe, after returning to the family this time, find an opportunity to confess his previous experience to the family? Chenglin, let's go, Li Chengmo reminded in a low voice. While Li Chenglin was thinking, Li Zhirui had already taken the 4 auction items and walked out with everyone. After Li Zhirui and his group walked out of the auction house, he unabashedly released his pressure as a giant and cultivator to deter those cultivators with bad intentions. Of course, this is only useful for those low-level cultivators. Some giant and casual cultivators don't care about it at all, and have been looking at them with vague eyes. After getting on the spirit ship, you stay in the cabin. No matter what sound you hear, don't come out, Li Zhirui warned. Chengmo, keep an eye on everyone. Uncle Jiu, don't worry, you should be careful too, Li Chengmo responded quickly. Li Zhirui smiled with a relaxed look. Don't worry, I will bring you all back to the family safely. It's not that he is arrogant, but he has the confidence to think that he can get away with it. Before he left, Li Shiking gave him several third-level talismans to prevent this. Moreover, Li Zhirui's divine power of water and wood divine light is like the gift of a demon beast. It is completely his instincts and consumes very little mana. Unless he is besieged by several giant and monks, there is no need to worry. And the confident monks are obviously not only Li Zhirui and others. A large number of monks walked out of the fairy city, driving various flying instruments and flying in all directions. The spirit ship took off and increased its speed to the fastest, like an arrow from a string, cutting through the sky, leaving only a blue track. And those robbery cultivators who found their targets contacted their companions outside while hurriedly keeping up with their prey. Among them was a giant and monk who targeted Li Zhirui and his companions. He followed behind the spirit ship without hiding, and sent a message talisman after another, contacting his companions. Li Zhirui naturally would not just watch him and call for help. The first time he saw him, he stopped the spirit ship and took the initiative to attack. As soon as he raised his hand, a spiritual light intertwined with a green and a blue light attacked him with an unstoppable edge. It's just a trifle, the pressure from the spiritual light was not strong. The golden elixir only snorted disdainfully and casually cast a defensive spell. But when the spiritual light wrapped around the light shield that protected him, he realized how wrong he was. The blue spiritual light was endless, constantly wearing away his defensive spell. If he hadn't discovered the problem in time and decisively cast the spell again, the defense would have been broken. But Li Zhirui's second attack followed closely. A huge millstone appeared in the sky. The space began to tremble slightly. If you look closely, you can even find several extremely tiny cracks in the space. Thank you all for your support. Happy New Year's Eve. Chapter 219 Confession. Having suffered a loss once, how dare the casual cultivator underestimate Li Zhirui's attack this time? Moreover, the power emitted by the millstone was so terrifying. The defensive magic weapon was fully used, and several defensive spells were cast on him layer by layer. But when the millstone fell and hid him, he was terrified by the aura that melted away in an instant. He didn't care about the consumption of mana and desperately cast defensive spells. It was not until the 10th layer of aura was broken that the power of the millstone was not so terrifying, and finally collapsed into pieces in front of him. Li Zhirui sighed with disappointment when he saw this. This was the most powerful magical power he constructed from the water and wood divine light. Although he had never thought that he could solve a giant and cultivator with just one magical power, he was a little shocked to see that the other party was unharmed. I underestimated you before." The cultivator was a little angry between his eyebrows and took out a golden, gourd-shaped magic weapon. The gourd was seen pouring down, and in an instant, countless golden small swords flew out of it, densely packed and bursting. Li Zhirui's face changed slightly, and his expression became solemn. His 10 fingers flew, and he pinched out the magic formulas one after another. Layers of water curtains fell from the sky, blocking him in front of him and offsetting the attack of the small swords. As a result, it only broke through 3 layers of water curtains, and then became dim and powerless. "If this is all you have, you should retreat as soon as possible," Li Zhirui said in a flat tone, without any sarcasm. "Then let me show you my tricks." The man seemed to have poured all his magic power into the gourd magic weapon, and the magic weapon skyrocketed dozens of times, swallowing up the nearby golden spiritual energy. For a while, the wind was so strong that the spirit boat began to sway left and right. Li Chengmo and others could only protect each other to avoid falling. Then, golden light flew out of the gourd, and it was like a living thing, changing into various monsters, sweeping towards Li Zhirui. The golden light monster was extremely fast and came to him in the blink of an eye. Li Zhirui had no choice but to use his magical power again. The water and wood were connected to form a forest on the water. Vines were hidden in it, like lurking poisonous snakes, constantly strangling the monster. This was the first time that Li Zhirui had fought with a cultivator of the same level after breaking through the Jinden. He thought that the situation was evenly matched, but it was not. Whether it was active attack or passive defense, he was the one who had the advantage. The reason was that the other party was born as a casual cultivator. When he was in the foundation building stage, his foundation was not as solid as his. After breaking through the Jinden, he had no way to learn magical powers and could only use the spells of low-level cultivators. The gap between spells and magical powers can be seen from the fight between the two. The two are simply incomparable. However, Li Zhirui could only have a slight advantage and could not completely defeat him. As for killing him, it is not an easy thing to kill a Jinden cultivator. Even if the other party is a casual cultivator, it is not something that can be done casually. At least Li Zhirui now does not have this ability. The man looked more and more cautious as he watched the golden beasts being destroyed. It was not that he had not fought with a golden elixir from the sector family before, but he had never felt so frustrated as this time. For a moment, he wanted to retreat. After all, he could not beat the other party. Instead of wasting time to continue to entangle with him, it was better to withdraw and find other targets. Li Zhirui did not know that the other party wanted to retreat. He was still thinking about how to repel him. He became more and more ruthless when he started to fight, and even used the golden elixir True Fire. Seeing this, the golden elixir suddenly urged the gourd magic weapon, and a dazzling golden light suddenly exploded in front of the two people. The light was too dazzling. In just a moment, Li Zhirui was pierced in the eyes and had to stop temporarily. Before closing his eyes, he hastily used his supernatural powers to protect himself and used his spiritual sense to observe the surroundings. However, this golden light seemed to have the effect of blocking the spiritual sense, so that the spiritual sense could not be released too far, and could only be around 10 feet away. When Li Zhirui felt the golden light dissipate and opened his eyes, he found that the other party had disappeared without a trace. He had no intention of chasing, and he controlled the spirit ship without hesitation and flew towards the Banyan Island. In the previous battle, in order to maintain his strength, he did not hesitate to use his mana, so after only 1 or 2/4 of an hour, only 40% of the mana in his body remained. The reason why Li Zhirui did not dare to stay was naturally because he did not forget that the other party still had a partner rushing towards him. In his current situation, it would be too difficult to face 2 Jinden monks, even if he had a lot of third-level talismans in his hands. "Come out." After leaving the battlefield, Li Zhirui said to the group of juniors. "Uncle Jiu, you were so powerful just now. You actually suppressed that Jinden all the time and forced him to escape." "Yes, yes. Uncle Jiu, you don't know how handsome you were just now." A fight seemed to make them forget their fear of Li Zhirui, and they said with admiration. Although they had been hiding in the cabin just now, they could still clearly see the situation outside through the window. "Ho ha ho ha," Li Zhirui laughed happily, but didn't say much. And this was one of the reasons why Li Zhirui asked him to bring them out. The previous auction was to broaden their horizons and let them know that there are many forces outside the Li family, and they are stronger than the Li family. and this fight on the way back was also within Li Zhirui calculations. He expected that Li Zhirui, who had taken the spiritual object, would definitely be intercepted by the monks on the road, and a fight would break out. He hoped that through this fight, a seed of yearning for a higher realm would be planted in the hearts of Li Chengmo and other future Li family members. Perhaps the seeds in most people's hearts can only germinate, or even die in the womb, but among so many people, there will always be one who thrives. And as long as there is one, then Li Zhirui's painstaking planning will not be in vain. The return journey was smooth sailing, and there were no monks blocking the road again, and they returned to Banyan Island safely and smoothly. We're home now. Let's all go back and have a good rest. Chengmo, come with me, Li Zhirui said. Yes, Li Chenglin, who had been thinking about whether to confess to his family all the way, finally made a decision at this moment. Uncle Jiu, I have something to tell you. Seeing that Li Zhirui was about to take Li Chengmo away, he quickly spoke. Li Zhirui turned around and looked at him, thought for a while, and said, go back and have a rest first, and then go to the main hall at noon tomorrow to talk about it, okay? After saying these two words, Li Chenglin suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, and his state of mind actually broke through. Seeing this, Li Zhirui smiled and said, postpone it for a few days, wait until you have consolidated your state of mind before coming to me, or you can also come to my eldest brother. After that, he took Li Chengmo away. Chapter 220 Gratitude. You're back, Li Zhirui stood up and said when he saw Li Zhirui and Li Chengmo. Li Zhirui nodded and said, Chengmo, tell me about the general situation of this auction. Hearing this, Li Chengmo immediately summarized what he saw and heard and told me. Not bad, Li Zhirui nodded with satisfaction and said, these are the 4 spiritual objects I bought. You can deal with them as you see fit. I will comprehend the 2 third-level pill formulas after I refine my life magic weapon, so as not to be distracted and end up not being able to practice anything in the end, wasting a lot of time in vain. Okay, Li Zhirui had no objection to this. Li Zhirui gestured to the 2 people and turned to leave the main hall. He had a feeling that it would not be long before he could start refining his life magic weapon. Time flies, and in a blink of an eye, it was several days later. Li Zhirui was refining a magic weapon in the cave. After a few days of trying, the condition of the magic weapon was much better than before. He decided that if the magic weapon did not improve much in the next month, he would refine it according to the current plan. Although the power was not as strong as he expected, with a continuous nurturing, the power of the life magic weapon could be gradually enhanced, and one day it would meet his requirements. However, one day, Li Zhirui was suddenly called to the main hall by Li Zhirui. He remembered that Li Chenglin had something to say to him some time ago. Second grandfather, Grandfather Leon, eldest brother. Seeing such a scene, Li Zhirui was a little surprised. What happened to Li Chenglin that could alarm all the senior members of the family? Chenglin, repeat what you just said. Li Zhirui motioned Li Zhirui to sit down first, and then said. Li Zhirui suppressed the doubts in his heart, looked at the nervous Li Chenglin, and said slowly, a year ago, when I was traveling in Yunping's Hao, I heard about the cave of a foundation-building cultivator. Driven by greed, I entered it, trying to find some valuable spiritual objects. In fact, my gains are indeed not small, but the crisis is also hidden in it. I fell into the trap left by the foundation-building cultivator. His soul entered my sea of consciousness and tried to take over my body. Although it was only a remnant soul, I was still no match for him. Under the severe pain, I passed out. When I woke up, I unexpectedly discovered that the other party's possession of the body failed. It's just that my soul and his merged, and I have each other's memories and life experiences. Li Zhirui saw that he closed his mouth, pondered for a while, and said, but because your soul is too weak, you are affected by the other party. Even if you try your best to cover it up, you will still inadvertently expose the expression and mentality that do not belong to you. Li Chenglin suddenly looked up at Li Zhirui, his eyes full of gratitude, because except for him, no one else really believed his explanation. That is, Li Zhirui was reluctant to see his outstanding clan member die, and the fact that the life card was not broken could not be explained, so he asked Li Chengmo to call Li Zhirui over to see if he could confirm his situation. In fact, from the intact life card, it can be seen that Chenglin is still himself, but he was affected by the foundation-building cultivator. Li Zhirui said, but now we don't know whether this is good or bad for him. Li Zhirui had also experienced Li Chenglin, but the difference between the two was quite large. The former absorbed almost all the memories of the foundation-building cultivator, so that he himself was affected. But the latter absorbed only a little obsession remnant soul, which was about his speculation, thoughts and insights about breaking through the nascent soul realm. This little memory was nothing to Li Zhirui. Everyone didn't expect Li Zhirui to save Li Chenglin, and their faces were full of embarrassment. They didn't know what to say for a while. "You go back first." Seeing that no one refuted him, Li Zhirui said to Li Chenglin, "Practice well, this may be an opportunity for you, if he can digest the cultivation insights of the foundation-building master while maintaining his own self. Li Chenglin's future path may be smoother than other members of the clan, at least in the foundation-building stage." Li Chenglin bowed to Li Zhirui solemnly and left the main hall in silence. "Zhirui, are you so sure that he has not been possessed?" Li Shiking asked with a frown. Li Zhirui said in a deep voice, "Because I have had such an experience, second grandfather. Do you still remember that I gave you 2 magic weapons of good grade?" Li Shiking nodded. "He is still using those 2 magic weapons. How could he not remember them? I actually lied to you at the beginning. There are indeed many spiritual objects in the Jinden cave, but in fact, just like what Chenglin encountered, it was a resurrection method arranged by the Jinden monk. I was invaded by the remnant soul of the Jinden monk at the beginning, and finally fell into coma for some reason. When I woke up, I absorbed his memory, so I was able to break through the Jinden so quickly. In order not to expose the space and the barrier-breaking pill, Li Zhirui lied twice. And he proved himself and completely dispelled everyone's doubts, because from the beginning, his life card was different from that of other clansmen, more advanced and more accurate. As long as there was something wrong, the family would find it. If you are still worried, you can send someone to observe Chenglin's every move in secret." Li Shiking shook his head. "No need." Li Zhirui said, "So, what else should they doubt? Since this matter is over, I will go back to continue refining my life magic weapon." After saying that, Li Zhirui bowed to several elders and turned to leave the main hall. However, he did not expect that Li Chenglin, who had left long ago, actually came to the door of his cave. "Thank you, Uncle Jiu, for helping me get rid of suspicion." Li Chenglin bowed again. Li Zhirui waved his hand and smiled. "You and I are from the same family, so we should help each other. Besides, this is just a piece of cake. Practice well and strive to break through the foundation as soon as possible, so that you can completely get rid of the influence of those memories. I will definitely not let Uncle Jiu down." This sentence made Li Zhirui stunned, because more than 10 years ago, someone also said the same thing to him. That person is the idol of the younger generation of the family, especially those with poor qualifications. Li Zhixuan. "Ha ha 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 ha, Zhixuan also said this to me back then, and she did not disappoint me. I hope you will do the same." Li Zhirui laughed out loud. Not only did she not disappoint him, but she did much better than he imagined. Although he has not seen Li Zhixuan in the 2 years since he returned to the family, he knows clearly about a recent situation from other members of the family. In the middle stage of foundation building, his sword energy was fully developed, and he even made a name for himself in Qingshan State. This is something that Li Zhirui had not achieved back then. Thank you for your support. Chapter 221 Success. At this time, Li Zhixuan was not as dazzling as Li Zhirui said. Instead, she was in tattered clothes, with messy hair, and a plain face with traces of blood. She looked tired and hid in a hidden cave. Roar! A tiger roar filled with anger resounded through the forest, and the sound of the animal's paw stepping on the fallen leaves was getting closer and closer. This made Li Zhixuan, who had originally relaxed her vigilance, immediately summon the spirit sword, hold it tightly in her hand, and stare at the outside of the cave. Once there was any movement, she would activate the sword energy and cut it out. Fortunately, the concealment formation she arranged worked, hiding the ferocious tiger monster from the outside world and avoiding a fierce battle. After all, with her current physical condition, fighting with an extremely angry second-stage late-stage monster is no different from seeking death. The reason why Li Zhixuan ended up in such a situation was because she found a section of third-level lightning wood in the tiger monster's territory. Lightning wood is an extremely precious spiritual object, not to mention that the grade is so high. If she could get the lightning wood, it would be a good choice to keep it for refining her own magic weapon in the future, or to sell it to her family for 200,000 or 300,000 spiritual stones. Although the tiger demon's intelligence is not high, and it cannot use the lightning wood like a cultivator, it also knows the value of this thing. How could it let Li Zhixuan steal it easily? Naturally, It pursued it all the way. Li Zhirui was no match for the demon tiger at all. She could only entangle it for a moment with all her strength. She escaped with the help of talismans and hid in this cave. If the demon tiger found her, she would probably really die here. Fortunately, this did not happen. After searching nearby without success, the demon tiger turned around and left. A few days later, Li Zhirui, who had barely treated his injuries and recovered some strength, left the forest and returned to the market. After buying some healing elixirs and spending a few days to heal his injuries, he left King Shan's house directly. After all, she has been away for 2 or 3 years. Now she has obtained such a precious spiritual object as the 3rd level lightning wood. It is just right for her to return to the family and store it. Li Zhirui has decided that she will keep the lightning wood and use it to refine her life magic weapon after she breaks through the golden elixir. Although she is only in the middle stage of foundation building now and is still a long way from the golden elixir, she firmly believes that she will be able to form an elixir one day. 2 flowers bloom, each showing its own beauty. At this time, Li Zhirui looked at the magic weapon suspended in front of him with satisfaction, and said with excitement on his face, although there are still some shortcomings, it is much better than the magic weapon refined before, and this, if nothing unexpected happens, should be his limit. After all, he is not a weapon refiner. Even if he is not an alchemist, his operation has always been delicate and his spiritual consciousness is relatively strong. No one else can make the magic weapon reach the current strength. In order to refine his life magic weapon in a better state, Li Zhirui rested for a day. In addition to daily practice, he spent the rest of the time regulating his breath. He originally wanted to play with Daking and Zhaoking, but Daking is now thinking about accumulating mana and breaking through the 3rd level as soon as possible. Since Zhaoking returned to the Banyan Island, he has been enjoying himself among the jade-billed eagles. If Li Zhirui does not actively summon him, he will not come back. Well, under Zhaoking's hard work, it is said that several jade-billed eagles are pregnant and are about to lay eggs. Perhaps it will not be long before a group of mixed-blood jade-billed eagles will appear in the family. Speaking of this, we have to mention the 3 people from the Wang family of the Rare Beast Pavilion who were killed before. The family got 3 third-grade monsters controlled by talismans from them, namely the steel-breaking eagles of the Golden Wind attributes, the fire-swallowing toad of the fire attribute, and the black rock giant bear of the earth attribute. After so many years, the Li family has successfully cultivated the tribes of these 3 monsters. Although the number of the 3 tribes is not large, there are 13 steel-breaking eagles, 17 fire-swallowing toads, and the black rock giant bear is the rarest, with only 9. But this is a good start for the Li family. Perhaps in a few decades, these 3rd-grade monsters will be able to completely replace the family's existing 5 2nd-grade spirit beasts and become the basic contracted monsters for the clan members. It is also because the family has cultivated several 3rd-grade monsters, so Li Shiking and Li Shilian no longer resist contracting again. Now one of them has contracted the steel-splitting eagle and the other has contracted the black rock giant bear. Although they are not like Li Zhirui, who has so many resources for cultivation, but with their current lifespan, if nothing unexpected happens, they should be able to cultivate them into 3rd-grade spirit beasts. Speaking of which, after Li Zhirui adjusted his state, he placed all the spiritual materials needed to refine his life magic weapon, such as Wanzai Kingmu and Zuan Bizhu, aside for easy access. Then he summoned the damp fire and began to remove the impurities of the spiritual materials one by one. Under the scorching of the damp fire, the size of the spiritual materials was reduced a lot, but the spiritual light was more dazzling. Because Li Zhirui needed a wide variety of spiritual materials, if he did not have a strong divine consciousness, he would not be able to maintain the refining of such a large number of spiritual materials. After refining all the spiritual materials, Li Zhirui began to fuse and shape them. This step was not very difficult. With his countless previous practices, he completed it relatively easily. The next step was the most difficult and final step, engraving the restrictions. Once there was a problem with the restrictions, the power of the magic weapon would be reduced at best, and the refining would fail at worst. Even though Li Zhirui had engraved these restrictions many times, he did not dare to relax it all this time. Otherwise, if he failed, he would not be able to collect a second batch of these precious spiritual materials. One after another, the restrictions emerged from the fingertips, and under the control of the divine consciousness, they sank into the interior of the magic weapon and were distributed in various places of the magic weapon. connecting with each other without interfering with each other. As time passed, the embryo of the magic weapon began to emit a dazzling aura, but beads of sweat began to form on Li Zhirui's forehead. He had made a wrong estimate before. Refining high-level spiritual materials consumes more mana and divine consciousness than he had guessed. Fortunately, as an alchemist, Li Zhirui had no shortage of recovery elixirs. He immediately took out a few elixirs from his storage ring and stuffed them into his mouth. Streams of pure spiritual energy flowed into his dantian along his meridians, replenishing his almost dried-up mana. With the support of the elixir, Li Zhirui successfully injected all the restrictions into the embryo without making any mistakes. Buzz! The embryo of the magic weapon, which was enveloped by a large amount of spiritual light, suddenly trembled slightly and made a buzzing sound. This was the call for the magic weapon to take shape. Seeing this, Li Zhirui suppressed his excitement and immediately forced 3 drops of blood from the tip of his tongue, which turned into a thin layer of blood mist, completely covering the magic weapon. As the spiritual light sank into the magic weapon, it scattered in every corner of the magic weapon. Success! I saw a small clump of tall and dense bamboo forest growing on a thick white cloud. The bamboo leaves were like swords, emitting sharp sword energy. A breeze blew by, and through the white cloud, I could see the thick bamboo roots growing in it. Chapter 222 Changes. Li Zhirui looked at his own life magic weapon with love, and read out the name he had already chosen, Qianzhen Chengmu Lingayan. After admiring it, he opened his mouth and swallowed the magic weapon into his dantian, and used his own magic power and breath to nourish it. Because it had been refined with blood essence before, it no longer needed to spend time refining it. On the second day, Li Zhirui found Li Zhihan and took the 2 recipes of Xingyan pill and Huchen pill from him. He planned to comprehend them well in the following days and strive to refine the elixir as soon as possible. You are refining your life magic weapon? Li Zhihan asked in surprise after hearing his purpose. Li Zhirui smiled and nodded. With a thought, he summoned Qianling. Under his intentional control, it was only a few inches in size and looked small and exquisite, but it exuded a bright and shining treasure light that could not be ignored. Although the rich treasure light does not necessarily mean that the magic weapon is powerful, it is a symbol of grade. Li Zhihan was surprised here. With his vision, it is not difficult to see that at least one of the spiritual materials used to refine this magic weapon is a 4th-level spiritual material. Zhirui, when you go out to practice in the future, it's better to cover it up a little when using magic weapons. This is Li Zhirui's chance, so he naturally won't ask more questions, but just kindly remind him. Don't worry, brother, I have specially arranged a band to cover up the spiritual light, so no one will see the clues. That is, Li Zhirui believes in Li Zhihan's character, otherwise it would be impossible to expose it. Brother, how many copies of the spiritual medicines required for these 2 pill recipes did the family prepare? Li Zhihan searched on the chopping board at hand, took out a jade slip, and said, we only purchased more than 30 copies of the 3rd-level spiritual medicines Jinrong fruit and Nongua grass, and the remaining spiritual medicines are at least 50 copies. The 2 spiritual medicines you mentioned are the most critical main medicines. Not only are they expensive, but they are also rarer than other spiritual medicines. Moreover, the Li family can collect so many copies thanks to the Nanya Chamber of Commerce. In order to compete with local chambers of commerce such as Zhuanfa Pavilion for the market, they took out a large number of precious spiritual objects for sale. You know, many spiritual objects were only occasionally seen at auctions before. Although Shenlai Mountain refused to allow Nanya Chamber of Commerce to enter its territory, the Li family was not far from Qingshan province, so they could conceal their identities and buy some spiritual objects. Let's collect as many as possible. The difficulty of the 3rd-level spiritual pill is not comparable to the previous low-level spiritual pills, Li Zhirui couldn't help but say. Although he had a space in hand, it would take at least thousands of spiritual stones to produce a 3rd-level spiritual medicine, and the total amount of these spiritual stones added up to hundreds of thousands. In order to refine Qianling, Li Zhirui had already squandered all the spiritual stones in his hand. The reason why he could still get spiritual materials from the family later was entirely because of his contribution exchange. Of course, even if he had so many spiritual stones, he would not use this space to produce spiritual medicine. Because just like what Li Zhirui said, the difficulty of the 3rd-level spiritual pill was too high. He could not use only dozens of spiritual medicines to refine a spiritual pill like before. If he really did this, his fame would be too great, and he would cause a lot of trouble that the Li family could not resist at all. Well, don't worry, the family has never given up buying these spiritual medicines, Li Zhirui nodded in response. Not to mention how much benefit these 2 third-level spiritual pills will bring to the family, just to say that after refining the spiritual pills, they can speed up the cultivation speed of the golden elixir cultivators. This alone is worth the Li family's full efforts. How is the family's precious spiritual medicine garden being built now? After Li Zhirui got the pill formula, he did not leave immediately, but asked something that was closely related to him. Thanks to Grandpa Yan's efforts, all the precious spiritual medicines are growing very well. For example, those foundation-building spiritual medicines will all mature in less than 30 years. Foundation-building spiritual medicines are the earliest precious spiritual medicines planted by the Li family. After so many years, the spiritual medicines are almost mature. After the first batch of foundation-building spiritual medicines mature, the family's foundation-building spiritual medicines should be able to be barely self-sufficient and no longer need to be purchased from the outside world. As for other precious spiritual medicines, second-level spiritual medicines are okay, and they can grow in 50 to 60 years, but third-level spiritual medicines will take at least more than 100 years. From this point, it can be seen that the Li family became rich too quickly and has no foundation at all. The two exchanged pleasantries again, and then Li Zhirui stood up to say goodbye. Ninth brother, but he didn't expect to meet an unexpected person on the way back. Zhirui, Li Zhirui said uncertainly. Because the female cultivator standing in front of him was very different from the Li Zhirui in his impression. In fact, if you look closely, you can find that her appearance has not changed much, but her temperament and clothing have changed dramatically. If Li Zhirui was a delicate daughter before, then now she is a green bamboo that can be blown by the wind from all directions. Li Zhirui didn't know what happened to her over the years, but in his opinion, this change would be good for Li Zhirui's future cultivation. The reason why she has changed so much is because the things she encountered in her training over the years have made her grow up rapidly. You just came back from training outside, right? Looking at Li Zhirui, who was exhausted and looked tired, he said quickly, go back and have a good rest, don't rush to practice. Brother Zhirui, I want to ask you, what do you think my future achievements will be? Li Zhirui was stunned when he heard the words, then smiled and said happily, who knows? In his opinion, Li Zhirui's ability to let go of the obsession of comparing with Li Zhixun was already a great improvement. Thank you for your guidance, Brother Zhirui. Li Zhirui's aura changed, and she actually gained some insights from those 4 words, and her state of mind was further improved. Perhaps it won't be long before she can break through the late stage of foundation building. Even though Li Zhirui had seen many storms, he couldn't help but be stunned when he saw this scene, and sighed in his heart, this is a real genius. Compared with Li Zhirui, he, who was promoted by the elixir, was not worthy of the word genius. After watching Li Zhirui walk away, Li Zhirui continued to walk towards the cave, but unexpectedly, there was a female cultivator waiting for him at the door. Ninth brother, Li Zhixun said straightforwardly, many years ago, you lent me a lot of contribution points, but because we always missed each other, you never paid it back in full. As she spoke, she took out a jade card and a jade box from the storage bag, and said, this jade card is the remaining contribution points, and the jade box is a second-level spiritual medicine I accidentally got when I was training outside. Although it is not precious, it is my heart, please don't despise it. Ninth brother, Li Zhirui didn't think much about it at first. Anyway, it was just a second-level spiritual medicine, which was not too precious to both of them. So he took the 2 things, but when he opened the jade box and recognized the spiritual medicine inside, he immediately shook his head and said, this thing is too precious, keep it for yourself, thank you for your support. Chapter 223 Transaction. The elixir that Li Zhixun gave him was called Huanglian Dream Fruit. Although it was only a second-level elixir, it had a powerful function that could construct a real dream world. For example, after Li Zhirui took this fruit and fell asleep, he could do whatever he wanted, imagine some elixir in his dream, and even make elixir. Of course, due to the grade, the higher the cultivation of the cultivator who took this fruit, the worse the effect. If it was taken by a foundation-building cultivator, it might last for an hour, but if it was taken by a golden elixir cultivator, it should only last for 2 or 3/4 of an hour. And if it was taken by a cultivator whose mind was not firm enough, it was very likely that he would not be able to distinguish between reality and dreams. In addition to these, There was another reason why Li Zhirui did not accept this thing, that is, Huanglian dream fruit had no seeds and could not be planted artificially. So far, no one has figured out how Huanglian dream fruit is bred, and if you want to get this thing, you can only encounter it by chance. And this is also one of the reasons why this thing is expensive. This thing is of little use to me, so you should take it yourself. Li Zhirui forcefully stuffed the jade box back into Li Zhirui's hands and said, when you have cultivated to the perfection of foundation building, you can try to use the Huanglian dream fruit to break through the bottleneck. With Li Zhirui's temperament, it is impossible for her to be unable to distinguish between illusion and reality. If you feel bad, wait until you break through the golden elixir, and give me another third-level spiritual object. Li Zhirui said this just to comfort her and make her feel better, but he never thought that when that day came, he would get a bigger surprise. Go back, I still have things to do. Seeing that she was still silent, Li Zhirui shook his head helplessly and walked straight into the cave. For the next few months, Li Zhirui spent time in the cave to comprehend the 2 third-level pill recipes. When he first saw it, he felt that the refining of the elixir was extremely difficult. Not only did the elixir need to be refined many times, but the alchemy formula was also very complicated. Especially the Xingyin pill, it must use the Yangdan formula, otherwise it would not have such a strong medicinal effect. Li Zhirui simulated countless times in his sea of consciousness, and only started to refine it when he felt a little confident. There are more than 20 kinds of spiritual medicines, including 3 precious third-level spiritual medicines, and it took more than an hour to remove the impurities of these spiritual medicines. Then he put the essence of the spiritual medicine into the alchemy furnace, and the 10-finger technique changed, fusing the essences one after another. At the same time, he needed to observe with his spiritual consciousness to find out what was wrong in time. But even though Li Zhirui was so careful, he still made mistakes. When fusing the essence of a certain spiritual medicine, because the speed was a little faster, the essences conflicted and scattered all at once. Facing this failure, Li Zhirui was very calm. To be honest, it was beyond his expectation that the mistakes were made until the last few spiritual medicines. Li Zhirui put the spiritual medicines that he had refined before aside and rested for a while before continuing to try to refine. But until a month later, he had used up all the spiritual medicines in his hand, and there was still a long way to go before he could successfully refine the elixir. Fortunately, Li Zhirui has been making progress. From the initial fusion of the essence of spiritual medicine, he can now fuse all the essences without any mistakes. Although there are still several spells to successfully refine the spiritual pill, and in order to pass these thresholds, he doesn't know how many times he needs to practice and how much spiritual medicine he needs to consume. He estimates that he needs to practice at least nearly 100 times before he can succeed. Alice, I don't know how many spiritual medicines the family has acquired during this period. Li Zhirui sighed helplessly. Because there were no spiritual medicines, he could only give up refining and start to deduce in his sea of consciousness. He waited for half a month before he got a batch of spiritual medicines, but there were only 10 of the most critical golden oil fruits, and Li Zhirui used them up in just a few days. When Li Zhirui heard that the spiritual medicines were used up again, a bitter smile appeared on his face. No wonder Zhirui deliberately strengthened the difficulty of the third-level spiritual pill, but there was no way. He still had to arrange for the clan members to go to Qingshan province to buy the missing spiritual medicines. Senior should be from the Li family of Banyan Island. In the Nanyat Hall, a pot-bellied foundation building cultivator said respectfully. Li Shiking, who had already bought the spiritual medicine and was about to return to the Banyan Island, frowned slightly. He deliberately concealed his cultivation and appearance. How did this foundation building cultivator recognize his identity? It's not difficult to find out about the Li family. Your family bought a recipe for Xingyin pill before, and Jinrang is indeed one of the main ingredients of Xingyin pill, the foundation building cultivator explained. Li Shiking asked calmly, you said so much, is there something you want to talk to me about? I heard that the Li family has a genius alchemist. I guess he's refining Xingyin pill now? We can provide spiritual medicine for free until he refines Xingyin pill, but from now on, the Xingyin pill can only be sold to my Nanya Chamber of Commerce. Nanya Chamber of Commerce is an external force. If all spiritual objects have to be transported from other continents, the cost will be too high, and the profit will be greatly reduced. Faced with this situation, The solution they thought of was to join forces with nearby forces to be as self-sufficient as possible in Dongzhou and reduce dependence on the Chamber of Commerce headquarters. Among all the spiritual objects, spiritual pills are the most important. In the area near Qingshan province, Li Zhirui, a second-level alchemist in the Golden Core realm, is the one they are trying to win over. This matter is of great importance. I need to discuss it with the family before I can give an answer. Li Shiking thought about it, and did not refuse immediately, nor did he agree directly. The conditions offered by the Nanya Chamber of Commerce are very tempting. At least it can save the family nearly 1 million spirit stones, but the promise of Shanli Mountain and Xuanfa Pavilion are both huge monsters that the Li family cannot ignore. Then I will wait for the good news from the senior. After saying that, the foundation building cultivator bowed and slowly withdrew. After Li Shiking returned to the Daring Island, he immediately summoned Li Zhirui, Li Shilian and others, and told them the promise and conditions of the Nanya Chamber of Commerce. Do you think you should agree? Li Shilian took the lead and said, as long as this matter is not leaked, it will definitely be a good thing for the family. It is not difficult to see that he holds an opinion of agreement. Li Zhihan was much more cautious, worried that if Shenli Mountain and Xuanfa Pavilion knew about this, it would bring disaster to the family. These two behemoths would definitely not pay attention to the Li family, but the nearby Yuan Mingzhuang had arranged countless eyes to stare at the Li family. Agree, Li Zhirui shook his head and said, the difficulty of refining the third-level elixir is too high. If I want to refine the elixir, I need at least 100 spiritual materials, and the family can't supply so many spiritual medicines for me to practice, but what the eldest brother said makes sense. We must be very careful about this matter and must not let Yuan Mingzhuang catch any handle. Although Li Zhirui was learning water alchemy, when the Xingying pill was sold by the Nanya Chamber of Commerce, it would definitely be suspected of him. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 224 Discussion. Although Li Zhirui is not the only water alchemist, if the Nanya Chamber of Commerce suddenly produced a large number of Zhengyuan Den, it would be too coincidental. After all the major forces knew that the Li family had obtained the recipe. However, as long as no solid evidence is found, all this is just speculation, and the Li family has an excuse to shirk responsibility. But to be on the safe side, we still have to find a way to cover it up. Discuss with the Nanya Chamber of Commerce. If they agree to sell in limited quantities or accept advance reservations, when the headquarters arrives, they will sell the Zhengyuan Dan to those who have reserved it, or they will transport the Zhengyuan Dan to other places for sale. These three methods were just thought of by Li Zhirui. At the end, he added, if they agree to one of these three conditions, then agree to cooperate with them. In this way, whether it is a time buffer or a cover-up, the possibility of the Li family being exposed can be reduced. Good idea. After thinking about it, everyone knew the benefits of this method. Although it cannot eliminate the probability of exposure, it is already very good. After all, if the Li family wants to develop rapidly now, it is impossible to rely on themselves. At least before there is a strong and profound foundation, it is necessary to rely on the power of other forces. And now the Nanya Chamber of Commerce is the best partner. Then trouble the second grandfather to go again. This matter is of great importance. Only Li Zhirui, Li Shilian, Li Shiking, 3 Jiangdan, and Li Zizhen, the patriarch of the family, can attend this meeting. It was Li Shiking who contacted the Nanya Chamber of Commerce before, so naturally he continued to come forward. No problem, Li Shiking shook his head. What's wrong with running around for such a good thing that is beneficial to the development of the family? After the meeting was dismissed, Li Zhirui returned to the cave and muttered to himself, this time, cooperating with the Nanya Chamber of Commerce can at least save tens of millions of spirit stones for the family. Of course, everything has its pros and cons. Once discovered, the Li family is likely to extract revenge from the Xuanfa Pavilion. And it is the kind that Shenli Mountain will not hinder. Li Zhirui shook his head. Since he has made a decision, there is no need to waste time and energy on it. Clear all distracting thoughts, continue to deduce the alchemy process in the sea of consciousness, strive to reach a perfect level in theory, and when you really start to refine, you can refine the elixir faster. After some cover-up, Li Shiking came to Nanya Tower again. This time, he met the chief shopkeeper of Nanya Chamber of Commerce in Qingshan State, a late giant and cultivator named Liu Yuanqing. Dao, you came here this time. I think you have agreed to cooperate with my Nanya Chamber of Commerce. If you don't want to, you won't come to him on purpose. Li Shiqing smiled and nodded, saying, Nanya Chamber of Commerce is a large interstate chamber of commerce. My Li family is so happy that we can cooperate with it. How can we refuse? Since you have decided to agree, you might as well say more good things first. Then, he changed the subject and said, but fellow Taoist, you also know that my Li family is weak, and the upper sect Shenli Mountain has promised such conditions. We dare not offend the upper sect in Xuanfa Pavilion. For this reason, my Li family has specially thought of several ways. I don't know if you can accept it. Liu Yuanqing frowned slightly, but smoothed his brows in an instant, as if he had never seen it before. He could understand the Li family's caution, but as businessmen, profit is their first pursuit, not to mention that in the Nanya Chamber of Commerce, the promotion of status and cultivation are not the first factors, but how much profit can be earned. The three requirements put forward by the Li family are all reducing their income to varying degrees. In other words, it is weakening his competitiveness. Liu Yuanqing pondered for a long time, and finally nodded and agreed, but he also had new conditions. The Li family must produce Xingyundan within half a year, and must sell 20 bottles of Xingyundan every month thereafter, and the price must be less than 3,000 lingxi per bottle. Li Shiqing's face suddenly became ugly after hearing such a harsh request. You know, the price of a bottle of Xingyundan is 5,800 lingxi. Even if the purchase price is lower than the selling price, it won't be so much less. The price of a spiritual medicine is about 2,500 to 2,600 lingxi. Nanya Chamber of Commerce buys it at such a low price. The Li family is completely working for nothing, and even losing money. After all, a bottle of Xingyundan has 10 pills, but Li Zhirui can't use a spiritual medicine to refine 10 pills. As for the first requirement, it's even more excessive. 20 bottles of Xingyundan must be sold every month? This is not a second-level spiritual pill, but a third-level spiritual pill with a skyrocketing difficulty in refining. Not to mention that Li Zhirui can't refine Xingyundan now. Even if he can refine it, the success rate in the early stage will not be too high. Moreover, every time refining, whether it is successful or failed, it takes at least 1 or 2 hours, and consumes most of the mana and consciousness. If you want to continue refining, you must spend 1 or 2 hours to recover. In other words, it takes at least 3 hours to refine a furnace of Xingyundan. Nanya Chamber of Commerce asked for 20 bottles of Xingyundan every month. Even if Li Zhirui worked tirelessly to refine the pills, he could not possibly complete this amount. But is this possible? Not to mention that Li Zhirui would not agree. The Li family would not agree to let him waste so much time on refining the pills. Not to mention that Nanya Chamber of Commerce did not set a deadline, and actually wanted to use hundreds of thousands of spirit stones to lock up the Li family. From then on, they could exploit the Li family with legitimate reasons. If Dao is so insincere, it can only mean that our cooperation is not destined to happen. As he said that, Li Shiqing stood up and walked out the door. Even if Nanya Chamber of Commerce is extremely powerful, the Li family cannot retreat, otherwise what future can there be? Of course, Li Shiqing also calculated that the other party did not dare to take action, so he dared to refuse directly. They can indeed easily destroy the Li family, but this will not only open up their market in Guangzhou, but will shrink and regress. After all, which family is willing to trade with a chamber of commerce that casually destroys the Jiandan family? Wait a minute, fellow Taoist. Liu Yuanqing knew that he was asking too much, so he said, if you have any opinions, just say it. We can discuss it slowly. The purchase price of Xingyundan is too low. If we use the price you said, the Li family will not only not make any spiritual stones, but will also suffer losses, Li Shiqing said seriously. Also, the Li family cannot sell so many spiritual pills every month. 10 bottles a month at most. If something irresistible happens, the Li family can temporarily reduce it, or directly postpone it, and make up the corresponding amount in the future. The quantity is too small. Liu Yuanqing was not very satisfied with this plan. Fellow Taoist knows the difficulty of the third-level spiritual pill. My Li family cannot damage the path of a clan member for the sake of profit, Li Shiqing said. Besides, the Li family will not sell Xingyundan to other chambers of commerce. Chapter 225 Notice. After another round of discussion, The two finally reached a mutually acceptable condition. Nanya Chamber of Commerce will provide a large amount of spiritual medicine to the Li family within 3 months, at least 120 portions. Correspondingly, the Li family must sell at least 3 bottles of Zhengyuandan in half a year, and the price is set at 4,300 spiritual stones if the price of spiritual medicine does not increase. In the next 10 years, Nanya Chamber of Commerce will sell spiritual medicine to the Li family at a price of 2,500 spiritual stones per portion, and the Li family must sell the 12th grade Zhengyuandan to Nanya Chamber of Commerce every month. If something irresistible happens, the Zhengyuandan can be reduced or postponed and replenished in the future, but the selling price must be lowered. The longer the time, the lower the price. In addition, there are other conditions, such as the Zhengyuandan must be limited and delayed in sale, and can only be sold to Nanya Chamber of Commerce, etc. All kinds of conditions were confirmed through oaths and contracts, and the two families were able to reach a cooperation. When Li Shiking took the contract back to the family, Li Zhirui was relieved. These conditions were much better than he thought. For example, the time limit was only 10 years. For a giant cultivator who enjoyed a lifespan of 500 years, 10 years was nothing, and it would pass in 2 or 3 retreats. In the next 3 months, Li Zhirui got 125 spiritual medicines. After enough practice, he successfully made the first Xingyin pill when he made the 117th spiritual medicine. At that time, Li Zhirui couldn't wait to take the spiritual pill, and suddenly a pure and huge spiritual energy was generated, which turned into mana and merged into the Jiandan. After all the spiritual energy was absorbed, the Jiandan became slightly larger. Even if it was only a little bit, it was enough to make Li Zhirui happy, because this Xingyin pill was equivalent to his 3 or 5 days of practice. And this was a Xingyin pill of poor quality. When he became proficient, the quality would definitely improve, and the improvement effect would be more obvious. You know, the reason why the Jiandan cultivators improve their cultivation so slowly is because the mana required to make the Jiandan stronger is too huge. Just to break through from the early stage of the golden core to the middle stage of the golden core, the mana required is more than that of the previous 2 realms. Not to mention that the mana still needs time to be refined. If you want to go further, you have to polish the golden core to prepare for breaking the Dan into a nascent soul. So even if the golden core cultivator has a lifespan of 500 years, only 1 in 10,000 can finally break through to the nascent soul, or even 1 in 10,000. Li Zhirui had calculated before that if he only relied on absorbing spiritual energy, it would take at least 50 years to break through the middle stage of the golden core. This is not considering the bottleneck. If there is a bottleneck, it is impossible to predict. Fortunately, Li Zhirui has now successfully refined the Xingyin pill, which can greatly reduce this long time. In addition, with the existence of Deking and Zhaoqing, if they break through the 3rd level, it can at least save him nearly 10 years. Because the first Xingyin pill was refined by her, he opened a new furnace, and this time, perhaps because of his luck, he actually refined 3 Xingyin pills, and then reported the good news to Li Shiking and others. Good. Li Shiking and his companions were overjoyed. Although the success rate of the pill was very low, only 10% or 20%, it was undoubtedly a good start. After Li Shiking calmed down, he said, "You will have to work hard next. You must refine at least 3 bottles of Xingyin pill to complete the first agreement with the Nanya Chamber of Commerce. Are the remaining spiritual medicines enough? If not, the family will go and buy some now." Li Zhirui smiled and said, "Don't worry, second grandfather. There are still more than a dozen spiritual medicines left, which will definitely be enough. Thank you for your hard work," Li Shiking said seriously, "but don't delay your cultivation because of this." Li Zhirui nodded in response, and then said, "I will go back to refine the pill first, you guys get busy." After that, he left in a hurry. He was now in the excitement of refining the spiritual pill and couldn't wait to continue. On the other side, in the Nanya Chamber of Commerce, Liu Yongqing asked his subordinates, "Has the Li family sent anyone to buy spiritual medicine during this period?" No. Liu Yongqing was a little surprised to get this answer. The 6-month agreement was about to end, and the Li family didn't come to buy spiritual medicine now. Is it because Li Zhirui successfully refined the Zhengyuan pill? It seems that this Taoist friend is really talented in alchemy. Born in the Nanya Chamber of Commerce, he is well informed and naturally knows the talent classification of alchemists. If it is a 1st level and 2nd level spiritual pill, If a spiritual pill can be refined within 30 portions of spiritual medicine, then it means that this person has good talent. But the real test of the talent of an alchemist is in refining a third-level spiritual pill. Those who can refine a third-level spiritual pill within 200 portions of spiritual medicine show that they have good talent. From this point, we can also see how big the gap is between the third-level spiritual pill and the second-level spiritual pill. Sure enough, when the 6-month period came, Li Zhirui took out 3 bottles of Zhengyuan pill and sold them to the Nanya Chamber of Commerce. The Zhengyuan pills that were sold were of the worst quality. The good ones were kept by Li Zhirui in the family, and he also kept a few pills for himself. Of course, with his current success rate of less than 30%, he could not keep many pills, and the quality was just so-so. Congratulations, fellow Taoist, your family has given birth to a third-level alchemist, Li Zhirui congratulated with a smile on his face. If nothing unexpected happens, Li Zhirui is likely to become an alchemy master, and a rare water alchemy master. This identity is enough to make him change his attitude from the bottom of his heart. After all, the network of relationships of an alchemy master is enough to destroy some weaker giant forces. Congratulations, Li Zhirui smiled and returned the greeting, and then said, I am going to buy 30 spiritual medicines. Do you have any? Li Zhirui's eyes flashed, trying to calculate Li Zhirui's current success rate. He smiled and nodded, and took out 30 spiritual medicines that had been packed in jade boxes from the stored ring. Li Zhirui carefully counted them, handed over the spirit stones, and said, the family has something else to do, so I'll take my leave first. A few months later, the Nanya Chamber of Commerce quietly put a few bottles of water-refined Zhengyuan Dan on the shelves. Although the number was small, the news soon reached the ears of Zhuanfa Pavilion. Do you think these Zhengyuan Dan were made by Li Zhirui? They actually suspected the Li family at the first time. There were also doubts about this. It is not easy to train a third-level alchemist. Does the Li family have such a deep foundation? There is no need to guess randomly, just send someone to keep an eye on it. The chief shopkeeper pondered for a moment and said, isn't there a giant insect near the Li family? There is no room for 2 tigers in one mountain. Let them do this. I guess they are happy to do something to eliminate this threat. The chief shopkeeper looked solemn, and said in a low voice, Shenli Mountain is our territory, and we must not let the Nanya Chamber of Commerce get involved. Thank you for your support. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.